Naruto, the Fuinjutsu professor of the Ninja Academy. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyright or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 26, Kushina's Victory Declaration. The next afternoon, in the sealing technique class. In a large lecture hall, nearly 200 students were silent, their eyes fixed on the open space in front of the podium, afraid of missing a single detail. Because there was a unique duel going on there. Hashirama. Madara. In the open space that turned into a small forest. Two ninjas wearing black ninja uniforms, red layered armor on the outside, and Konoha forehead protectors on their heads were fighting fiercely. The super high-speed physical attack that was so dazzling that the little ninjas were stunned and their jaws were almost unable to close. If you look closely, you can see that the two people on the field are one with long black hair and the other with a killer. They are the two legendary ninjas who founded Konoha together, Senju Hashirama and Uchiha Madara. Of course, these are not real people. After all, the real Senju Hashirama is no longer alive, and Uchiha Madara is still hiding in some cave. What the little ninjas are seeing now is actually just the image projected from Xia Yan's jewel disc. And this scene is a special cutscene that will only be triggered when Hashirama Senju and Uchiha Madara appear on the field at the same time. However, for the little ninjas who have never seen the world, the image alone is enough to make them excited. At the same time, whether it is the students who have attended the first class or the students who were attending the class for the first time, they have a deep understanding of teacher Xia Yan's unconventional approach. As soon as the class started, teacher Xia Yan said that he would demonstrate the use of the practice talisman paper. When the little ninjas heard it, they were originally wondering what was so good about the thing to demonstrate. As a result, they never expected that what teacher Xia Yan called a demonstration was actually playing cards openly with the new teaching assistant in class. What kind of operation is this? Moreover, they have strange machines on their wrists. Whenever they put cards on it, a corresponding projection will appear on the field. There are famous ninjas that the little ninjas are familiar with, as well as various ninjutsu and ninja tools. Although it looks very fun. But it seems to be getting further and further away from the purpose of demonstrating the practice talisman paper. While playing cards, teacher Xia Yan also introduced the gameplay of this keening card game. Because this game is not complicated, and the cards are familiar ninjas and ninjutsu tools, the little ninjas quickly understood the rules. Therefore, their reactions changed from being confused at the beginning to being excited now. As for the talisman paper used for demonstration practice, they had already forgotten it completely. What is that and can it be eaten? Of course, there is one exception. That is Sarasobi Waiko, who was sitting in the last row of the classroom with a frown on his face. Although Xia Yan said that this was a demonstration of teaching aids. But Waiko looked up and down, left and right, and no matter how she looked, she could only see that they were playing games. And from the students' reactions, this is still a very toxic game. She has been engaged in education for many years, and she soon realized the harm of this game, and she wanted to rush up to interrupt Xia Yan's demonstration. But she barely suppressed this idea. After all, she had also seen Xia Yan's use of projection to stimulate students' interest in the last class. Who knows if there is any secret behind this game as well? In order to avoid being slapped in the face, Waiko decided to wait and see how Xia Yan would explain it later. At this time, the duel had just entered the final stage and came to the 9th round. After a tense and exciting tug-of-war, teacher Xia Yan and assistant teacher Kushina each summoned the trump cards of their own decks. It was the moment to decide the winner. The hearts of the students watching the game were lifted. Among them, Obito, who was born in the Uchiha clan, was particularly entangled at this time. Because on one side of the field is the first-generation Hokage whom he admired, and on the other side is the ancestor of their Uchiha clan. Since ancient times, it has been difficult to be both loyal and filial. Obito didn't know which side he should cheer for. He was in a dilemma and really wanted to rush forward and shout, "Stop! Stop fighting!" If Xia Yan heard his inner voice, he would definitely comfort him. "Don't worry, you won't kill anyone anyway." Back on the field, Kushina, who had just summoned Uchiha Madara, waved her hand with high spirits and shouted loudly, "I want to activate Uchiha Madara's Great Fire Extinguishing." Battlefield Rose Uchiha Madara cost 7, attack 9, HP 71 to dance 2. Instant body, can attack as soon as you appear on the field. Fire style Great Fire Extinguishing. Destroy all ninja units on the opponent's field with HP less than 4. Introduction. the head of the Uchiha clan. He joined hands with the first Hokage, Senju Hashirama, to establish the first ninja village and named it Konoha. The world calls him and the first Hokage the legendary ninja. As soon as Kushina gave the order, the Phantom of Uchiha Madara jumped back and began to make seals with both hands at a rapid speed. Almost in the blink of an eye, the Phantom completed the seal, took a deep breath, and puffed up his mouth. Fire style. Great fire extinguishing. The overwhelming flames swept over in an instant, engulfing all the ninja phantoms on Xia Yan's field. The classroom also suddenly turned into a broken sea of fire. Many students who came to class for the first time were frightened and screamed, and hurriedly stood up and wanted to escape. Fortunately, the students who had attended the first class calmly pulled the former. Alas, they really have never seen the world. They shook their heads and sighed, how could young people nowadays make a fuss so easily? They completely forgot that their performance in the last class was the same. Our eldest brother doesn't save the second brother. Soon the sea of fire dissipated, and after regaining their vision, everyone hurriedly looked at the field. They saw that there was only one ninja unit left on Xia Yan's side, Hashirama Senju. But this is not over yet. Kushina did not end her turn, but pointed her index finger straight at Xia Yan. Madama, next I'm going to use Uchiha Madara's instant body effect to attack Xia Yan directly. Do you want to dance too? Along with the very cool words, Uchiha Madara's phantom instantly came in front of Xia Yan and hit Xia Yan's waist with a fierce whip kick. At this time, Xia Yan had to praise his own technical ability. The phantom he made was too realistic. So when Uchiha Madara's phantom attacked, he subconsciously wanted to dodge. But he still held back and let the phantom's attack pass through his body. Beep, beep, beep. The number above Xia Yan's head plummeted, from 11 points to only 2 points. Precarious. Ha 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 ha. Feel the pain. This is my trump card, Uchiha Madara's strength. Kushina, who was already in a state of excitement, laughed out loud without caring about her image. It was as if she was infected by Uchiha Madara's card. And she looked very sick. It seems that the 4 laughing heroes will add another general. From Kushina's confident look, we know that she came prepared today and made sufficient preparations. Of course, this can also be seen directly from the big dark circles on her face. She must have stayed up all night last night. But it was all worth it. Kushina said that she wanted to let Xia Yan know that she was no longer the rookie who lost every battle yesterday. In order to do this, Kushina went through a lot of tragic special training after taking the cards and jewel discs home yesterday. Not only did she remember all the effects of the cards by making a large number of cards, but she also built a powerful deck under the guidance of Grandma Mito, who had inexplicably strong card skills. In order to catch him off guard, she also deliberately chose Uchiha Madara as the trump card of the deck, hoping to kill Xia Yan by surprise. Of course, this also inadvertently led to the drama of Senju Hashirama vs Uchiha Madara. Everything went so smoothly. The situation at this time was developing according to the script written by Grandma Mito for her. Step by step, Xia Yan, the inventor of this game, was forced into a desperate situation. Kushina seemed to have seen Xia Yan fall to the ground with an unwilling look on his face after his defeat. Then she flew over and made the final blow. I've always wanted to see this expression on your face, the expression of jealousy towards me. Thinking that Xia Yan's first blood was about to be taken away by her, Kushina felt excited. She even couldn't help but declare victory to Xia Yan on the opposite side. Ha 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 ha, Xia Yan, your only 2 health points are like a candle in the wind, there is no chance of a comeback. No matter how you struggle, everything will be over in the next round. Chapter 27 The Strongest Hokage. This is a short thing. This was Xia Yan's first reaction after hearing Kushina's victory declaration. At the same time, he sincerely admired Kushina for being a brave man who dared to say such a taboo word as a candle in the wind in a duel. You know, in the animation of Yu-Gi-Oh!, anyone who dared to say this word to his opponent would have grass 3 feet high on his grave by now, so he was not panicked at all by the overwhelming disadvantage in front of him. He even had the mood to analyze Kushina's operation in the previous round. Kushina, you didn't use Uchiha Madara to exchange my Senju Hashirama just now, but chose to attack directly. It seems that you're very confident that you can end the battle in the next round. This means that Kushina already has the means to kill Xia Yan in the next round, so she doesn't care about the damage Xia Yan caused to her in this round. Hehehe, you are worthy of being the designer of this game. Your reasoning is accurate. The complacent Kushina didn't mind revealing her trump card to Xia Yan, and flicked 3 identical cards from her hand to show him. Xia Yan looked strange. Yes, this is my trump card, the Great Fireball Technique. Ninjutsu. Fire Style. Great Fireball Technique cost 233.3% chance to cause 3 damage introduction. The Fire Style ninjutsu invented by the Uchiha clan is widely circulated in the ninja world. Because of its difficult to hit nature, it is also known as the Merciful Technique. Although each card has only a 33.3% chance of success, I have exactly 3 cards in my hand now. Isn't it 100% if we round them up? Xia Yan. ... There were too many points to complain about this, and he didn't know where to start complaining for a while. However, for the young ninjas watching the game on the sidelines, Kushina's words sounded so reasonable and well-founded that they thought that teacher Xia Yan was probably in trouble. As expected of the woman who once dominated the ninja school, even teacher Xia Yan is not her opponent. Some senior students began to tremble. Kushina's performance reminded them of the fear of being dominated by the blood-red pepper. The lower-grade students who didn't know Kushina were infected by this atmosphere and began to worry about teacher Xia Yan. For a moment, Xia Yan's figure seemed particularly tragic, like a brave man who challenged the devil alone. But even in the face of such adversity, Xia Yan still maintained a calm and composed expression. He smiled slightly. In response to Kushina's declaration of victory, he just gently responded, "That's not necessarily true." Although it sounded like a dying struggle, Xia Yan's confident smile made everyone have a glimmer of hope. Confidence in teacher Xia Yan began to emerge from the bottom of their hearts, as if they heard an exciting music playing in the classroom. Hey, this doesn't seem to be an illusion. It took the little ninja a while to realize that there was really music in the classroom. BGM Technique. In order to stir up the scene, Xia Yan turned on the hidden BGM function of the dual disc. The passionate melody of the execution song named Rikage with Danzatachi pushed the atmosphere of this duel to a climax. The execution platform has been set up, now it's time to show the real skills. Draw a card. After a moment, Senjutsu would release True Thousand Hands. The shadow of Hashirama Senju, with a few red lines on his face, clasped his hands together, and the surging chakra made his hair and clothes flutter. A huge Buddha statue with countless huge arms behind it rose from the ground under his feet, making the huge lecture hall look particularly small. The perspective of the image projected by the dual disc kept zooming out and up, and the whole classroom seemed to be teleported to a distance at once. Only then could everyone barely see the full image of the thousand-handed Buddha. The dense forest and ancient trees that had just served as the background board now looked like small grasses against the background of the Buddha. A bright moon slowly appeared in the night sky. Then, thousands of huge fists began to fall from the sky. Boom, 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 boom. The endless huge fist shadows turned the place where Kushina stood into a scorched earth. From time to time, Kushina's unbelievable wailing could be heard from inside. Impossible. The little ninjas had all kinds of ideas, but they soon converged in one direction. Since even the first generation Hokage is so powerful, then the third generation, who is the strongest Hokage, must be his. The little ninjas couldn't help but take a breath. The temperature in the classroom suddenly rose by 1 degree. It's terrifying to think about it. I didn't expect the third generation to be so powerful. Wow, such a powerful third generation often takes time to give us speeches, which really touches me. I seem to have heard that the first and second generations can't beat the third generation Hokage together. Soon, everyone's attention began to focus on Ashuma Sarutobi, the son of the third generation, and they all looked envious. This guy's reincarnation skills are too powerful. Ashuma. See, he was a little uncomfortable with everyone's hot eyes. At the same time, he was muttering in his heart. So, is the stinky old man so powerful? Ashuma still couldn't believe it. But since everyone said so, it shouldn't be wrong. So waves of fear began to surge in Ashuma's heart. Although he knew that the old man should be very powerful as a Hokage. But he didn't expect that he would be so powerful. Thinking that his father could use a move that was more powerful than the thousand-handed Buddha, Ashuma's back was covered with cold sweat. It turned out that his father was just playing when he beat him. Usually, he always made him angry. It seems that he can grow up so big, and he has to thank his father for not killing him. Ashuma silently made up his mind in his heart that he would never make his respected father angry in the future. Sarutobi Baiwako, who was also stunned by the true thousand hands, also recovered at this time. Baiwako was not surprised that Xia Yan knew about the true thousand hands and the sage mode. After all, the earth-shaking battle that year lasted for several days and nights, and the mountains and rivers changed color, and even changed the terrain of the entire battlefield. It is impossible for the entire ninja world to pretend that nothing happened. In fact, that battle can be said to be the one with the most records so far. There are even many novels on the market adapted from that battle. Especially the huge Buddha statue with countless hands, which has been witnessed by many people, and it is no secret. And it was after that battle that Hashirama Senju truly established the title of the God of Ninja. Even Konoha was happy to see it happen, and specially built statues for the two of them on both sides of the Grand Canyon in the center of the battlefield to commemorate the war and shock the ninja world. And this Grand Canyon was later called the Valley of the End by the world. Back then, Lake Biwa also watched this battle from a distance, so although the thousand-handed Buddha projected by Xia Yan was a little different from what she saw, she still couldn't help but feel emotional. However, at this time, everyone's discussion about the comparison of the combat power between the first-generation Hokage and the third-generation Hokage came into her ears, which made her come back to her senses. When she heard everyone discussing how many first generations the third-generation Hokage could beat, Lake Biwa couldn't hold it anymore and felt a little guilty. I have to remind Hiruzen when I go back, or don't let people advertise that you are the strongest Hokage. We can't afford to lose this person. Chapter 28 Basic Operations of Duelists. There were also students who were more serious and raised objections, questioning the authenticity of the obviously weak and true Thousand Hands. How could a human perform such a ninjutsu? It must be a fiction, just like the projection in the last class by teacher Xia Yan. The young ninjas calmed down and thought about it, and they felt that it made sense. In other words, for them who only knew the three-body technique and shuriken throwing, the true Thousand Hands was too much of a blow to their self-confidence. So much so that they were not willing to believe it was true. In order to get a definite answer, the young ninjas looked at Xia Yan with a pleading look. As a result, Xia Yan really nodded. The move just now, the true Thousand Hands, was actually designed by me based on the legend, so it does have some fictional elements. What? It was designed based on a legend. Legends are exaggerated. Yes, the legend also says that the Six-Path Sage created the moon, so it's a lie. Teacher is so mean, he scared us, we thought there was such a powerful ninjutsu. I'm confident in becoming Hokage again. After hearing Xia Yan's reply, the little ninjas finally breathed a sigh of relief. However, Xia Yan did not like to maintain their self-confidence. In fact, due to the limitations of the dual disc, Xia Yan could not show the Thousand Hands Buddha in a 1-to-1 scale, so he had to reduce it in proportion. The size of the projection is actually about the same as the tailed beast. Recalling the 9 tails being grabbed by the Buddha like a chicken with one hand, you can see how much it has shrunk. So it does have some fictional elements. But Xia Yan decided not to tell the little ninjas about these specific details, so as to prevent them from doubting their lives. After all, there was already someone doubting his life opposite Xia Yan. Kushina was lying on the ground in a state of frustration, her body trembling slightly. This moment was just like that moment. I'm so stupid, really. Kushina raised her lifeless eyes and continued. I only knew that I could defeat Xia Yan in the next round, I didn't know that I might be defeated this round. Wait, something seems wrong. Kushina, who was originally mumbling like Xia Yan, found a problem during the review process. I couldn't predict this situation because I didn't know that Senju Hashirama could actually upgrade with the card Sage Mode ! Sage Mode costs 10 when there is first Hokage Senju Hashirama on the field. It can be upgraded to God of Ninja World Senju Hashirama. Thinking of this, Kushina couldn't help but look up at Xia Yan, with a look of dissatisfaction. I clearly memorized all the cards yesterday, and there was no such card in it. Xia Yan, you are cheating. Xia Yan spread his hands innocently. As the designer of this game, it is reasonable and logical for me to add new cards to it. It makes sense. Although Xia Yan didn't tell Kushina, he was a little rushed to add new cards, just in the battle just now. In simple terms, Xia Yan changed the spell on the hand card so that it could be recognized by the dual disc as the Sage Mode that has not been implemented yet. Although Xia Yan designed that card, he originally planned to release it after commercialization to cheat a wave of Krypton, but he didn't expect to use it here. Well, money can be made again, but the title of Duel King cannot be taken away. What, cheating? Isn't it a basic operation for duelists to print cards on the spot? After hearing what Xia Yan said, Kushina almost spit out a mouthful of blood. I worked hard to memorize so many cards, and you actually said that you can act them if you want? Is there any law? Can you do whatever you want just because you invented this game? How can you have the final say? Kushina weakly lowered her head and drew circles on the ground, silently accusing Xia Yan. At this moment, her eyes accidentally caught a line of words engraved on an inconspicuous corner of the jeweled disc. The final right of interpretation of this game belongs to the designer Yushin Xia Yan Kushina. 052-054. When Xia Yan and Kushina took off the jewel disc and put it on the podium, the students sighed in unison. They haven't had enough fun yet. Why is it over? Teacher Xia Yan, play another round. Many young ninjas began to make a noise to express their dissatisfaction. As I said before, what I just demonstrated to you is a card game called Keening. Xia Yan's explanation spread throughout the lecture hall at the right time, making everyone quickly quiet down. I think everyone is a little confused now. What is the relationship between the practice talisman paper I just mentioned and this game? The young ninjas looked at each other. No, Teacher Xia Yan, we don't have any doubts. Because we have long forgotten about the talisman paper. But since Teacher Xia Yan said so, everyone nodded very politely. Yes, you're right. Xia Yan didn't know what everyone was thinking, and continued to talk according to the script. This game relies on these two jewel discs, which contain many principles of sealing and projection techniques, but these are still too complicated for you, and are not what you need to pay attention to now. What you need to pay attention to is this. Xia Yan held a card between his index and middle fingers, and signaled Kushina to distribute these cards to the students. The little ninjas cheered with anticipation. Soon, each student got a small stack of cards and began to play with and study them over and over again, reading the words printed on them. Although they looked like very rough little pieces of paper, each student treasured them very much, fearing that they would damage them. Xia Yan waited for a while, and after everyone's curiosity was satisfied, he showed the cards in his hand and said, I think some of you have discovered that the cards in your hands are a little different from mine. The little ninjas compared the cards and found that there were more blank spaces in their hands compared to Teacher Xia Yan's cards. Many students suddenly realized how to use these cards. So Xia Yan did not keep them in suspense and revealed the answer directly. Yes, these cards are the rune papers we will use to practice drawing runes in the future. As you can see, the rune formula printed on each card is missing the key part, and that is what you will learn next, 24 basic runes and related rune formulas. Only when the rune formula is successfully completed can the card be recognized by the jewel disc. In other words, if you like this game, then practice well. As long as you fully master these runes, you can create your own deck as you wish. Xia Yan, who was frantically recommending Keenan to everyone, suddenly saw that Principal Baiwako's eyes were glaring at him, and he quickly added, of course, more importantly, mastering these runes will lay a solid foundation for our future learning of sealing and projection techniques. So that when we contribute to the construction of Konoha in the future, we can help a little more. So everyone, let's play cards for the rise of Konoha. Chapter 29 Teacher, I want to learn how to play cards. The young ninjas had never thought that the little Keening game would actually have such a big connection with the future development of Konoha. It was as if they were guilty of something serious if they didn't play cards. Teacher Xia Yan's sentiment of not forgetting the village even though he was in a low position deeply touched them, and he seemed to be covered with a layer of holy light. The young ninjas could not hold back and wanted to rush forward to hug his legs and shout, Teacher, I want to learn to play cards. However, some students found a problem. But Teacher Xia Yan, Ebisu raised his hand and asked, do we have to wait until the end of the semester to learn 24 runes before we can play this game? Everyone had the same doubts and looked at Xia Yan. If that was really the case, then everyone's motivation might not be that great. Xia Yan naturally thought about this question and answered calmly, of course not. In fact, I have divided the study plan for this semester into several stages. There will be a group of cards corresponding to the runes that need to be learned in each stage. For example, the deck in your hand now, I call it the novice deck, which corresponds to the 4 most basic runes to be learned in the next few classes. As long as you master these 4 runes, you will be able to perform the most basic battles. As the teaching progresses, I will continue to issue new cards to correspond to the runes learned later. In other words, as long as you keep learning new runes, there will be a steady stream of new cards for you to use. Teacher, stop talking, let's start the class quickly. Uchiha Obito couldn't help but interrupt Xia Yan's long speech, and said impatiently. It seemed that Xia Yan would kill him if he said one more word. The classmates in the same class as Obito all had strange expressions. I didn't expect that one day I would hear Obito, the last one, urging the teacher to hurry up. I've never seen such a thing in my life. However, Obito obviously expressed everyone's thoughts, so the young ninjas all nodded to show that they deeply agreed. If we start the class earlier and learn those runes, won't we be able to start playing cards earlier? Xia Yan, who was interrupted, smiled slightly and decided to obey that public opinion and start the formal class directly. But before that, he first opened the system memo and made a note for Obito in his small notebook. At 2:13:06 p.m. on September 3, 42nd year of the Konoha calendar, Uchiha Obito interrupted me during class. I will remember this grudge. After closing the interface, Xia Yan gave Obito a kind smile. During the remaining time of the sealing technique class, the young ninja showed unprecedented concentration and enthusiasm. Everyone racked their brains to understand every word Xia Yan said, trying to master the runes as soon as possible. This made Sarutobi Paiwako, who was sitting in the last row, a little scared, feeling that everyone seemed to be under some illusion. Even her good-for-nothing and foolish son Ashuma stopped peeping at the little girl from the Shui family, and was taking notes with great concentration. She didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Under the amazing enthusiasm of the little ninjas, Xia Yan completed today's task 10 minutes before the end of get out of class, and explained to everyone the basic knowledge and drawing methods of 2 runes. Seeing that there was still time, he originally planned to show everyone some stories using projection as he said in the last class. As a result, except for a few girls, all the students raised objections and urged Xia Yan to continue the lecture. The momentum of wanting to empty Xia Yan's stomach made Xia Yan a little scared. There was no choice but to continue the lecture. It was not until the end of the class that Xia Yan cruelly ignored everyone's eager eyes and began to assign homework. The homework is to practice drawing the first 2 runes you learn today in your homework book until you learn them. You can also try to fill in the required runes on the cards I give you, but please try again after you have fully mastered these runes, otherwise you may destroy the cards. Although you can ask me or the teaching assistant for more if they are broken, but everyone has a certain quota. If you use them up, you'll have to buy them yourself. To be honest, these cards are not cheap, so everyone should pay attention. At this time, Ebisu, who was wearing sunglasses, raised his hand and asked a question. Teacher, we seniors have actually learned these runes. So when can we play? No, test whether these cards are drawn successfully. Xia Yan replied. I have already made an agreement with the principal that this classroom will be open as a place to practice drawing runes, and the dual disc will be placed here when the time comes, so that everyone can play. No, it is for testing. Baiwako's mouth twitched. She did agree to Xia Yan's application, but she didn't expect this to be the case at the time. Are you sure this is a practice room, not a game room? Xia Yan must have done it on purpose. Are you playing the game of kill first and ask for permission later with me? A cold light flashed in Baiwako's eyes. Xia Yan, danger. Great. Hearing Xia Yan's answer, the senior students cheered immediately. Doesn't this mean that as long as they spend some time to complete the deck, they can play to their heart's content before the juniors? The junior students looked at them enviously, biting their fingers, and secretly determined to learn these runes as soon as possible. Seeing that the senior students were so happy, Xia Yan decided to add fuel to the fire. He slapped his forehead, as if he suddenly remembered something, and said, By the way, I forgot to tell you just now that after each use of the cards in your hands, the dual disc will erase the runes on it, and you need to redraw them before you can use them again. The smiles of the senior students who were originally in high spirits gradually solidified, and finally looked at the smiling teacher Xia Yan with a dull face. Listen, are you talking human language? Doesn't this mean that every time they finish playing cards, they have to spend a lot of time to complete all the runes before they can start the next game? The little ninjas all looked constipated. Thinking of the days when they have to practice drawing runes every day, they feel that their future is bleak. But they're reluctant to stop playing the game of Keenin. Sure enough, Teacher Xia Yan's routine is too deep. It is obviously a big pit, but it always makes people fall into it willingly. Sarutobi Baiwako finally figured out Xia Yan's routine and his face was slightly brighter. Sure enough, Xia Yan has a comprehensive plan for the course of sealing. In the last class, he first showed stories to make everyone interested in his projection technique as a motivation for everyone to learn this course. However, this goal is still a bit far away for ordinary students, and it is easy to give up because of temporary setbacks. So Xia Yan used this card game in this class to provide everyone with a short-term goal. Just learning a rune can't play any role in the sealing technique. But in this card game, it means being able to use new cards. Baiwako, who has been engaged in education for many years, knows that many students are not unwilling to learn. It is that what they have learned does not have immediate positive and negative feedback, as if they are doing useless work, so it is easy to slack off. Why do geniuses often work harder than ordinary people? It is not because they are more self-disciplined, but because they learn quickly and can see the results of their learning quickly, so they can get positive feedback from their learning continuously, and naturally they are willing to work hard to learn. And Xia Yan's approach is to cut the extremely long positive and negative feedback chain of learning the seal technique into countless segments, and then bundle it with the card game. In this way, students can get immediate positive and negative feedback from the boring room drawing learning, so as to be full of motivation to learn the seal technique. At this time, our principal Baiwako no longer doubts whether Xia Yan has the ability to teach this course well. Even if he only realizes half of the pie he painted for the students, he will be the best seal technique teacher in the history of the ninja school. No, perhaps even the prefix of sealing technique can be removed. Baiwako looked at Xia Yan, who was still talking at the podium, and couldn't help but smile with relief. After all, Xia Yan was not a ninja from the ninja clan. Everything he knew and learned when he was a child came from the ninja school. It is obvious that his current achievements are the result of the ninja school. Otherwise, how could he have known it since birth? The ninja school has cultivated another excellent student for Konoha. As the vice principal, how could Baiwako not feel happy and proud? Speaking of which, the only person who can make her feel this way recently is Minato Namikaze, who is also from a civilian background and has recently become famous. The two of them happen to have blonde hair and silver hair. These two people with blonde hair and silver hair are probably the two most dazzling new stars of their generation. However, thinking of the various problems that this game may cause, Baiwako felt a little headache again. No, I can't spoil this kid anymore. In order to prevent Xia Yan from making big news for her again in the future, Baiwako decided to give him a warning. The bell finally rang for the end of get out of class. Xia Yan knew that students who didn't have classes would probably stay here to try to use the dual disc, so he asked the idle Kushina to stay and supervise. He then slipped away, ready to go back and continue his plan to empty the library. Unfortunately, this time he was caught by Saratobi Baiwako, who appeared at the door with good preparation. Teacher Xia Yan, please come to my office, now. After saying that, Principal Baiwako glanced at the students who were rushing to the podium, shook his head and turned to leave. Xia Yan's face was bitter, and he followed helplessly. At this time, the students' attention was attracted by the dual disc on the podium, and they did not notice this scene. Chapter 30 Extracurricular Guidance in the Principal's Office. A few hours later, Xia Yan supported his old waist and came out of the principal's office with a tired face. Alas! No matter who sits upright and listens to people's lectures for a few hours, they will become like Xia Yan. As expected of the wife of the third Hokage Saratobi Hiruzen, the couple is so talkative. Xia Yan couldn't help but complain in his heart. I really want to see the scene of their quarrel when I have the chance. Through the window of the corridor, Xia Yan saw the sun setting in the west, and many students on the playground carried their school bags and walked out of the ninja school in groups of 3 or 5. It turned out that it was time for the ninja school to finish school. Another afternoon wasted. Xia Yan spread his hands helplessly. Who made you just a dead worker? Then Xia Yan took a step and walked towards his office, humming a song faintly. We're a group of workers. Not long after, Xia Yan returned to his office. As soon as he entered the door, he couldn't help but be slightly stunned. The afterglow of the setting sun shone into the office through the window. A red-haired girl sat at her desk, holding a brush in her hand and making cards for students to practice. The yellow light sprinkled on half of the girl's face, making her facial features more three-dimensional. The baby fat she usually had was gone, revealing her future beautiful face in front of Xia Yan. It was like an elegant and beautiful oil painting. At this time, the girl also noticed the movement, raised her beautiful eyes slightly, and saw that it was Xia Yan, and her eyebrows were instantly filled with joy. Xia Yan, you are finally back. Come and play a few games with me. I will die if there is no genin to beat me. Hearing Kushina's yelling, Xia Yan's forehead instantly hit several black lines. Well, the artistic conception was gone at once. Xia Yan turned his head speechlessly and looked out the window. He felt that the wind today was particularly noisy. It's time to go home now, Kushina, why haven't you left yet? After relieving the embarrassment in his heart, Xia Yan asked casually, and walked to the table, picked up a card that Kushina had just made and checked it. Judging from that pile of finished cards on the table, she has been working for quite a while. This made Xia Yan murmur in his heart. Someone didn't leave quickly after work, but took the initiative to work overtime? Is it necessary to be so stubborn? You're so stressful. Could it be that Kushina has set her eyes on my throne as a teacher of sealing techniques? Thinking of the Neon people's ancestral skills of overthrowing the superiors, and the popular tradition of riding and despising ancestors in the ninja world, Xia Yan couldn't help but feel a little worried. I can't let Kushina ride on my head. It seems that it is not impossible. Oh, are you talking about this? Kushina didn't know how many strange things Xia Yan had imagined. After listening to his questions, she suppressed her desire to play cards and began to explain to Xia Yan. Just now, Xia Yan, didn't you ask me to stay in the classroom to supervise everyone's use of the jewel disc? As a result, I found that the speed of card consumption may be faster than we expected, so I want to make more cards while I have time now, just in case. Of course, I also want to wait for you to come back to play cards. Xia Yan ignored Kushina's last crazy hint. Hearing about the rapid consumption of cards, he was a little surprised. Oh? Now there are so many students who can complete the entire deck. Xia Yan knew that some senior students should be able to do this, but this would not threaten the card inventory, right? Did he underestimate everyone's level? However, Kushina quickly shook her head and denied his guess. That's not the case. As she said that, her expression suddenly became a little strange. It's just the opposite. Although some senior students are barely able to complete the deck, they need to try repeatedly before they can succeed once. As a result, they fail too many times and exhaust their chakra. In the end, they didn't get a complete deck. Xia Yan's mouth twitched slightly when he heard it. It turned out that he didn't underestimate everyone, but overestimated everyone's level. Thinking of how confident Ebisu and the others were just now, Xia Yan felt a little embarrassed for them. Pa, they are just a bunch of weaklings. So the consumption of the cards is? Xia Yan asked again. Hearing Xia Yan's question, Kushina couldn't help but feel a little proud. She put her hands on her hips and unconsciously puffed out her chest. Xia Yan subconsciously glanced at her. Wow, Robert is a cliff. Then he heard Sylvester Stallone. No, it was Kushina who proudly explained. It's actually very simple. I set the two dual discs to viewing mode and let them take turns to use them. In this way, even students who have only drawn a card can see the results of their hard work, and everyone will be happy. I see. Xia Yan nodded, although he still couldn't understand what was so fun about the viewing mode. This might be because he had used the projection technique too many times in the past, resulting in a high threshold, and simple projection could no longer interest him. This is just like between men and women. At the beginning, even if they just hold hands, they will blush and their hearts will beat fast for a long time, but after a long time, it becomes come on, don't pity me just because I am a delicate flower. Although he doesn't understand what makes people happy, Xia Yan still doesn't hesitate to give his praise to Kushina's improvisation. You did a good job. As for what's good, yes, as long as everyone is happy. After all, the most important thing for a person is to be happy. Well, Xia Yan didn't think about which angle to praise from. Fortunately, Kushina seemed to agree with Xia Yan's perfunctory words and nodded repeatedly. Then she suddenly thought of something and said to Xia Yan, by the way, Xia Yan, there are too many students who want to test the cards. Even if each person is only given 1 minute, they will have to wait in line for a long time. So everyone suggested that we should add a few more dual discs. I have already prepared for this. Xia Yan waved his hand, but for now, I will only put out 4 at most. If there are more, I guess our principal will have to talk to me again. Kushina was very happy to hear that her opinion was adopted, but she was a little worried after hearing the end. As expected, Lady Baiwako asked you to go to her office just now. Does she have any opinions about this game? She was so worried for a reason. After all, even she, who was addicted to Keenan, felt that Xia Yan's novel teaching method seemed a bit too radical. Not to mention someone like Lady Baiwako who was old-fashioned and conservative. She could even imagine the scene of Xia Yan and Lord Baiwako arguing fiercely in the principal's office. Xia Yan, stop teaching students in your way and teach normally. Wait, I actually think, enough. I don't want your opinion, I want my opinion. Remember, I'm the principal. Lord Baiwako, you will regret it. And then it ended with Xia Yan slamming the door and leaving. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novel, as there you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 31a. New era in ninja school. After playing the little drama in her mind, Kushina came back to her senses and just heard Xia Yan's answer. Actually, I had the same idea as you before. Xia Yan snapped his fingers and continued, I didn't expect that Baiwako-sama was so open-minded, which made my long speech prepared in advance useless. Xia Yan did not lie. Although Baiwako-sama verbally lashed him for several hours in the principal's office. But in the end, she still said that she reluctantly gave him a suspended death sentence because it was not easy for Xia Yan to design this game, allowing him to continue to try this teaching method. To be honest, if Xia Yan had not experienced countless workplace PUA in his previous life, he would have been grateful to Baiwako-sama. In addition, since those cards and jewel discs need to be reimbursed by the ninja school. So Baiwako naturally conducted a thorough review of the game of Kenin and made many comments. This also reminded Xia Yan of the fear of being dominated by Party A's father in his previous life. Although Baiwako did not make any requirements like colorful blab, she still imposed various restrictions on Xia Yan to prevent him from touching taboos that should not be touched. One of the results is that the matching cards that Xia Yan originally planned to create for Uchiha Madara may not be officially unveiled for a long time. After all, with the increasingly tense relationship between the Uchiha clan and the village, it seems a bit inappropriate to promote Uchiha Madara too much as a traitorous ninja. In addition, Baiwako's teachings made him deeply realize that the card Sarutobi Sasuke did not seem to fully show the majestic demeanor of the father of the third generation. So he decided to revise it. This was out of his consideration of the game balance as a game designer, and it was definitely not because he bowed to the evil forces. At the end of the conversation, Baiwako reiterated one thing again and again. Her support for Xia Yan was not without a premise. That is, the students' grades in other subjects should not be affected by this. Otherwise, she didn't mind making the curse of the sealing technique class come true herself. Xia Yan watched for a long time at the time, but couldn't tell from Baiwako-sama's rare smile whether she was joking or not. So he opened the document Yushin Xia Yan case book. Sealing technique teacher serial murder case from the system, and silently added Sarutobi Baiwako's name to the list of suspects. At the same time, for the sake of his life, Xia Yan decided to take it easy and not let the students get too addicted. It seems that the difficulty of drawing rooms must be increased. It must be made sure that students can play this game, but they can only play a little bit. After listening to Xia Yan's talk about the conversation with Baiwako-sama, Kushina couldn't help but hold her chest and breathe a sigh of relief. That's good. She finally found such a favorite job, and she didn't want something to go wrong after just 2 days of work. Seeing this, Xia Yan thought that Kushina was happy that she could continue to play Kenin, and couldn't help but tease her. It seems that Kushina, you really like this game. Kushina felt that Xia Yan seemed to be laughing at her childishness. Her face turned slightly red, and then she retorted unconvincedly. I am happy for the students. When we were in school, we didn't have such fun toys, ahem. Before Kushina finished speaking, Xia Yan thought of Baiwako's instructions and hurriedly coughed twice to interrupt her. Kushina-san, remember, this thing must be called a teaching aid in the future, not a toy. You can't say nonsense outside. And when using the jewel disc, you can't say you were playing a game, but you have to say you were testing the room drawing effect. Otherwise, the principal will make trouble for me again. Yes, it is a teaching aid. Kushina covered her mouth and laughed secretly. Xia Yan couldn't help laughing. For a while, the office was filled with a happy atmosphere. Young, handsome, and able to print cards, the sealing teacher Yushin Xia Yan, who was known as the Jewel King, made students flock to learn the sealing technique with a sentence during class. Do you want my cards? If you want, I can give them all to you. Draw the runes. I put all the cards here. So all the little ninjas flocked to their sealing class to pursue their dreams. The ninja school began to welcome the arrival of the great jewel era. The opening theme sounded, time flies, and October came unknowingly. It has been a month since I joined the ninja school. Xia Yan has gradually adapted to the teaching work of the sealing class and has become more and more handy. Under his various incentives, the little ninjas are full of enthusiasm for learning the sealing technique. As of the last class, Xia Yan has taught 13 basic runes, and the teaching progress is very fast. In terms of practice, most students have been able to draw the 4 runes required for the novice deck. This also means that the game of Kenin cards has quickly become popular in the ninja school. So much so that when the little ninjas quarrel now, it is no longer popular to say don't leave after school, see you on the playground. Instead, they take out a deck of cards and shout, let's play Kenin cards. The style of the whole school began to distort. In the lecture hall dedicated to the sealing technique, every day when there is no class, it will be crowded with students. In the open space in front of the podium, 3 groups of battles are going on at the same time. As long as the students have completed the rooms on the entire deck, they can line up and take turns to use the 3 sets of battle equipment to play that game. After playing a game, they have to go back to their seats to complete the rooms on the cards. Because everyone's room drawing level is average, the completion speed is not fast. It really takes 2 hours to charge and 5 minutes to last. Although the actual playing time is much less than the time to draw rooms, the little ninjas still enjoy it. At this time, Xia Yan fully realized that the mature and perfect game products in his previous life had a dimensionality reduction attack on the entertainment desert of the ninja world. It made him feel like he was trading glass beads with the natives. There was actually a kind of pleasure of immorality. In order to continue everyone's enthusiasm for keening cards, Xia Yan also timely launched the second round of keening cards, harrowing ninja heroes of the Warring States period. It includes more than a dozen female ninjas who are famous in the Warring States period, such as Hinata Natsumi, Shimura Yamanaka Sawako, Shirawi Mei, Jin Saki, corresponding to the next 8 rooms. The appearance of this batch of female ninja cards made the girls who were not so interested in keening become enthusiastic. However, when they played cards, they liked to stop halfway and comment on the costumes and makeup of those female ninjas, which still gave Xia Yan some headaches. It is worth mentioning that some students with good talents even sneaked away and mastered the rooms that they were going to learn later, and then urged Xia Yan to quickly distribute the third round of cards. Because they have summed up a rule. That is, the later the card is released, the stronger it must be. Whenever Xia Yan heard the students discussing this rule in a mysterious way, as if it was some big secret, he could not help but frown. Isn't it a common operation of card games that each version has a new god? Otherwise, how can they force you to spend money? Will you become stronger if you don't spend money? JPG, of course, it is more about forcing you to spend money than to spend money. After all, the purpose is to let them practice drawing new rooms. If the novice deck can conquer the world, then don't the students only need to practice the first 4 rooms? Xia Yan had experienced so many mobile games that forced people to spend money in his previous life, and he was already familiar with the routines of forcing people to spend money, so he naturally would not make such a low-level mistake. What's more, the little ninjas don't know that in addition to the strength of the cards, Xia Yan has also prepared a series of means such as rankings, skins, rarity, passes, duel tournaments, etc. to motivate everyone. The era of big duels? It has just begun. Thank you for the reward from the local union, thank you for the reward from playing mahjong without red, and thank you for the reward from book friend 2020416085651851834. Chapter 32. Disagreement among the ninja clan. The emergence of keening cards has made the enthusiasm of the young ninjas for learning the sealing technique unprecedentedly high. Xia Yan's dual ninja school plan is also being implemented smoothly. However, the birth of new things always brings various unpredictable effects. There are positive ones, and of course there are negative ones. For example, recently many students have been working hard to draw rooms on cards during other classes in order to play more games. The seriousness of the students made the teachers in the class laugh and cry, and they didn't have the heart to trouble them. So they troubled Xia Yan. One day at noon, the Chinese teacher, the mathematics teacher, the code teacher, the firewall morality teacher, and the physical training teacher appeared in the teacher's cafeteria together. The 5 of them were dressed in black and surrounded Xia Yan in a white coat. Xia Yan, who was holding a bowl in his hand and chewing rice in his mouth, looked confused. After listening to the teacher's accusations, he was speechless and showed an innocent expression on his face. Did they draw talismans in your class? Yes. I didn't draw talismans in your class? No. Then why don't you go find them? Why do you come find me? Good people have to let people point kunai at them. Because you were a sealing technique teacher. Well, Xia Yan also knew this was the truth, but he just wanted to make a joke. It's a pity that no one here can catch his joke, otherwise, the whole let kunai fly will open everyone's eyes in the future. In order to settle the dissatisfaction of these teachers, Xia Yan finally reluctantly paid for a meal. Of course. Except for the physical arts teacher. Don't think I don't know that you are taking advantage of the situation. Show me how students can secretly draw talismans in your physical arts class. The final ending is naturally a happy ending. Everyone sat together in the small cafeteria, toasting each other, so happy. Only the physical arts teacher was whimpering on the side, feeling very aggrieved. Unexpectedly, in the ninja world, physical arts teachers could not escape the fate of being excluded by physical education teachers. At the same time, for the sake of his own wallet, Xia Yan learned from his mistakes and repeatedly ordered everyone not to draw talismans so diligently in other classes in the following classes. Otherwise, he would confiscate the cards according to the situation, or even cancel the qualification to take the selective class. So far, the wrong trend of students working too hard to learn the sealing technique has barely stopped. In addition to the fuss caused by the little ninjas in the school, the dissatisfaction of some ninjas outside the school with this game also gave Xia Yan some headaches. When he designed the game Kenan, he actually anticipated that this situation might happen. Although this game was designed to imitate the card game of the same name in the so-called unflammable Boruto, Xia Yan did not ignore the difference between the two eras. The era of Boruto was peaceful for a long time, and there were not many wars. At the same time, the development of network technology, the information of many ninjas is no longer a secret. This gave the game Kenan a soil for birth. Even if the ninjas of that time were made into cards, they would not be resisted because of the problem of leaking ninja information. On the contrary, in an era when children no longer wanted to be ninjas, this game could arouse people's yearning for ninjas, and it might even be strongly supported by major ninja villages. Considering the differences in the times, Xia Yan would naturally not copy and paste and dare to make the current ninjas into cards. It is estimated that he would die from dozens of kunai in his back in a few days, and he would be judged to have committed suicide. After all, that would be too hateful. So Xia Yan chose carefully and finally decided to use the Warring States period as the theme of this card game. Because after market research, he found that the Warring States period was the hottest IP in the ninja world at this time. Xia Yan thought about it carefully and found that the reasons behind it were also quite complicated. Today's ninja world is in a transitional period of alternation between the old and the new ninjas. With the development of the ninja economy, the improvement of the status of businessmen, and the improvement of civilian life, the group of employers with the financial resources to hire ninjas continues to expand. Therefore, ninjas are no longer just secret killers serving a small number of people, but gradually transformed into mercenaries for most people, and their image has gradually become more friendly to the people. The nature of mercenaries also requires them to make a name for themselves in order to get more commissions and higher commission fees. In simple terms, the sales model has transformed from the spirit of craftsmanship to the internet celebrity economy. Later on, there will be star ninjas like Kakashi, the top technician of Konoha, whose reputation is known throughout the world and who have been praised by everyone who has tried it. Ninjas in the pain period of transformation are also awkward about their own publicity and have not completely let go. The reflection in the market is that a large number of books with the theme of the Warring States period have appeared. Because the Warring States period, which is not far away, just meets the traditional thinking of ninjas who do not want to expose too much of their own information, and can also spread the reputation of the family. Therefore, most ninjas will not impose too many restrictions on such books, and only regard them as publicity for their own families. There are even some smart ninjas who hire a group of writers every year to sing praises for their ancestors. When Xia Yan investigated, he was surprised to find that the strength of the third-generation father Saratobi Sasuke in various books was slowly improving year by year. From being only a kid-level goalkeeper more than a decade ago, to being able to stand on equal footing with Hashirama Senju and Uchiha Madara in the latest Sasuke reading. It's terrifying to think about it. I, Xia Yan, would like to call you Zhao Zilong of the ninja world. It can be seen that most ninjas are actually happy to see this Warring States themed Kenan card, or at least they are in a wait-and-see state. There are even ninjas who keep asking Xia Yan if he has any plans for commercialization, which makes him very annoyed. It was not until he went to the principal's office with a stack of business plans that this temptation gradually subsided. Of course. It's not that there are no traditional ninjas who follow the old ways and continue it the old ways. After all, every ninja village has a dark side, and someone needs to do things that are not allowed to see the light, and there is enough soil for these ninjas to continue. The roots of the Yambu are basically their own private land. They are still happy with this, saying that everyone in it is talented, speaks well, and they like being in it very much. It is conceivable that when these low-key ninjas saw their ancestors made into cards by Xia Yan for students to play with at will, they felt as uncomfortable as if they were NTR'd by Xia Yan. So they naturally raised strong protests. And simply protesting is already for the sake of the ninja school. You should know that the usual way of defending rights is to directly erase the other party on the physical level. As for Xia Yan, he was too lazy to argue with them, who could not get on the big ship of the new era. For these victims who have been violated at present, Xia Yan has always adopted the strategy of if there is infringement, contact and delete. As long as someone expresses dissatisfaction, he will delete it from the shelves, which is straightforward. Since the other party does not like his little gadgets, he will not put a cold face on the hot butt. It's not summoned who came to complain. Xia Yan's timely rectification finally left these ninjas speechless. In addition, he clung to the thigh of the vice principal, so although these ninjas were still dissatisfied, they did not trouble him. For that time being, everything was peaceful. This made Xia Yan feel a little regretful. In this way, wouldn't the usual plot of pretending to be cool and getting slapped in the face be impossible to carry out? Chapter 33 Ashuma's Diary. Ashuma's Training Diary. September 4th. Since I learned that my respected father is so powerful, I decided to take him as a role model and work hard to become the strongest Hokage. I opened this new diary to urge myself to work harder this semester, at least to learn the great fireball technique. September 5th. I practiced the nature change of fire style and gained a lot. I feel that I am one step closer to the goal of being the strongest Hokage. September 6th. September 11th, I practiced the nature change of fire style. September 12th, in the sealing class, I mastered the drawing of the 4 basic runes, and teacher Xia Yan asked me to test it with the dual disc. If it were the old me, I would definitely be very excited. But now I am different from before, and I no longer look down on these children's toys. However, since the teacher said so, I still give it a try. September 13th, playing cards. September 14th, playing cards. September 15th, playing cards. September 16th, Ashuma. How can you be so depraved? Have you forgotten the study plan we made earlier? I can't go on like this. September 17, playing cards. September 18, playing cards. September 23, playing cards. Today I heard teacher Xia Yan say, I examine myself 3 times a day. Have I drawn talismans? Have I played cards? Have I won? I agreed with him and played a few more games. October 1, as expected, human ability has its limits. The goal of being the strongest Hokage is too far away. I decided to set a feasible goal again, which is to become a dual king, crossed out, and a master of sealing techniques like teacher Xia Yan. I don't want to be a Hokage anymore, father. October 4, waiting in line to play cards. Recently, everyone can use the novice deck, so it takes a long time to get a turn. It's really torturous, but it also gives me time to study the construction of the deck. Hey, something seems to have happened at the duel field. I'll go over and take a look, in the lecture hall dedicated to the sealing technique class. As usual, students were allowed to practice drawing runes on cards and test their rune drawing results through the dual disc. However, unlike usual, an accident occurred during a duel, which attracted many young ninjas to watch. My grandpa is gone. In the duel arena, the fat boy Shigeru Takeshi wearing the dual disc was filled with grief and kept muttering this sentence. The Mitamon Sunio, who was standing opposite him and fighting with him, was also scratching his head at this time, not wanting to urge the other party. The young ninjas watching around also looked solemn, as if they were not watching people playing cards, but attending a funeral. Hey, what happened to Fat Tiger? Ashuma, who had finally squeezed to the front row of the crowd, didn't know the truth, so he grabbed a Shirui Genma beside him and asked. The card is burned. Genma glanced at Ashuma and explained briefly. Then he pouted again and used the sinbone in his mouth to signal Ashuma to look at the fat boy's hand. The fat boy standing on the duel field was holding a somewhat burned card in his hand. Seeing this, Ashuma couldn't help but twitch his mouth. What? I thought something big had happened. Why don't we just ask him to ask the teacher for another card? Ashuma said speechlessly. That's it? The so-called burn card is actually a card-playing term invented recently by the card masters. It refers to the phenomenon that when the card is placed on the dual disc, it fails to activate the projection, but is burned due to excessive chakra flow. In addition to mistakes in drawing talismans, the more common situation is that the talisman paper on the card is used too many times and the internal aging eventually leads to it. Everyone has been playing Keenan for a while, and recently the lifespan of the first batch of cards has also reached the end of the line. This situation is not uncommon. So Ashuma still can't understand the scene in front of him. Is it necessary to be so sad about burning a card? Seeing this, Xia Yan had to explain again. Ashuma, you forgot that someone from Fat Tiger's family had asked teacher Xia Yan, so the cards of his grandfather Shinjuroken have stopped being issued, and the one just now was the last one. Unlike us, Fat Tiger burned his grandfather, and there will be no more in the future. I see. Ashuma remembered this. That's indeed a bit tragic. Ashuma looked at Shinjuro Takeshi with sympathy, and finally blended into the atmosphere of the crematorium around him. As a senior card player, Ashuma naturally knew what the cards of his ancestors meant to his classmates who came from the ninja clan. Regardless of whether they were strong or weak, everyone would spontaneously add the cards of their ancestors to their decks as the main force. They were proud to fight side by side with their ancestors. Ashuma himself was no exception. The trump card of his deck was his grandfather Saratobi Sasuke. Ashuma's grandfather in real life had passed away when he was 3 years old. So his memory of his grandfather was also very vague. He only remembered that he often secretly gave him candy, and was complained by his mother for this. Until recently, he had a deep understanding of his grandfather from books like Sasuke Reiden. Ashuma then knew that the duo of Senju Hashirama and Uchiha, who were known as the Miracle Generation for their invincibility, actually had a third member. That was the Phantom Third Man that the two Miracle Generations dared not underestimate. Blab, no, it was Saratobi Sasuke. He obviously had the same strength as the two, but he never showed off. Like a shadow, he quietly cleared away all kinds of troubles for the two shining people beside them. Only when he sat in the back could the two of them be completely assured to fight in the front. When Ashuma saw in the book that his grandfather said to the first generation of Okage before going to the battle, "I will take care of your wife and children, don't worry." He was moved to tears by the sincere friendship between the two. Ashuma, who knew that his grandfather was so great, always regretted that he was ignorant when he was a child and did not spend more time with his grandfather, so that now he doesn't even have many decent memories. Now even if he wants to create new memories with his grandfather, there is no chance. Ashuma never thought that he would have the chance to see his grandfather again and fight side by side with him. Although it was only in a virtual card game. But for Ashuma, it was precious. This small card seemed to have become a bridge for him to communicate with his dead grandfather. So even though Ashuma knew that more powerful cards would appear in the future, he still made a decision silently. He would never remove this card from his deck. After hearing this by accident, teacher Xia Yan told him that this was his soul card. Putting himself in his shoes, Ashuma naturally understood Fat Tiger's feelings very well. After all, because he often played cards, he often used the card Saratobi Sasuke, so he had burned Saratobi Sasuke twice so far. Even though he knew that he could get a new one from the teacher, Ashuma was still very sad every time the card was burned. Not to mention how Fat Tiger felt when his last card was burned. However, Ashuma's silence did not last too long. Because he suddenly remembered something, his expression gradually became strange. Finally, he couldn't help it, stepped forward and said loudly, "Fat Tiger, I remember your grandfather is still alive. Thank you for the reward from Xia Yan. Thank you for the reward from Watson Bishandi." Chapter 34 The Devil's Temptation, 3000 words, please vote and collect. Damn it, Fat Tiger, your grandfather is not dead, why are you crying so hard? Yeah, you were just wasting our time and feelings. You wasted 1 minute per person, and 40 people is one class, how are you going to compensate us? No, I can't calm down without beating him up. Beat Fat Tiger, divide the cards. Obviously, the little fat boy Shinjuro Takeshi is not well respected and is usually hated. Now he has just offended everyone, and everyone is rising up and intends to take the opportunity to teach him a lesson. At this time, Kushina, who was sitting behind that podium correcting homework, was already upset by correcting homework, and now the quarrels over Ashuma and the others made her head buzz, and she was immediately ignited like a powder keg. She slammed the table and stood up, her hair behind her was divided into 9 strands and fluttered slightly, and she shouted, "It's so noisy over there, be quiet." "Yes. As you command." As the protagonists of this commotion, Ashuma and Shinjuro Takeshi did not dare to argue, and quickly stood at attention and responded obediently. "And you?" Kushina glanced at the little ninjas who were watching, "have you finished drawing the runes? Have you finished your homework? It seems that there are too few homework assignments. I have to report this to Xia Yan later, is this too little?" The little ninjas' faces suddenly turned bitter, but they didn't dare to refute. They could only disperse and return to their seats to start drawing rooms with sad faces. The classroom finally became quiet again. If other teachers saw this scene, they would definitely be amazed. I didn't expect that Kushina could manage this group of troublemakers so well after just taking office. Although she herself was a troublemaker of the previous generation, this was not enough to make these little ghosts bow their heads. Especially those students from the ninja clan, they have never given face to teachers. After all, these ninja children came to the ninja school just to respond to the policy of the third generation Hokage. Except for some cultural courses that they need to listen to a little. For the rest of the practical courses, they have been taught by the elders in the clan since they were young, so they naturally look down on the teachers who were generally only at the level of tuning. Therefore, it is difficult for them to have a heartfelt respect for their teachers. However, the situation of the seal technique class is somewhat different now. Although the seal technique knowledge taught by teacher Xia Yan is still very simple, they can also learn it in the clan. But the projection technique he performed in class has attracted the attention of many ninja clans. Although some ninjutsu masters have been able to restore the projection technique according to the principles Xia Yan said. But at most, it is just some simple applications. To create a large-scale illusion with sound and color and movement with a wave of his hand like Xia Yan, they are still helpless. Because according to their calculations, to achieve an effect similar to Xia Yan, the constructed ninjutsu needs at least more than 1,000 seals. Is this not bullying an honest person? This is no longer a question of whether it is difficult or not, but it is too complicated and the gain is not worth the loss. With this effort, it is better to learn more real lethal ninjutsu, such as the Great Fireball technique. Obviously, this projection technique is not designed according to the idea of sealing ninjutsu, but must be combined with Xia Yan's rune ninjutsu system to play the greatest role. Therefore, many old people in the ninja clan said, "This teacher Xia Yan has something." Now that everyone is pursuing the simplification of ninjutsu, Xia Yan actually goes against the trend and develops in the direction of complicating ninjutsu. The young people in the clan may not know what this concept is. Their old people usually only use these two words to describe such people, crazy. But they also know that every innovative trend of ninjutsu is often led by crazy people like this. Whether Xia Yan's exploration is successful or failed, it is destined to leave a strong mark in the ninja world. What surprised them even more was that they also heard that this teacher Xia Yan actually planned to teach this projection technique to all students for nothing. After all, this is enough to support the secret technique of a family. So after the news was confirmed, this matter caused a violent reaction within the various ninja clans. Although everyone had different opinions and discussions, in fact, everyone said the same thing, but with different emotional intelligence. The high emotional intelligence said, "This teacher Xia Yan implemented the Wall of Fire with his actions and is the true successor of the Wall of Fire." The low EQ view is, "This teacher Xia Yan is probably a fool." However, no matter whether the elders of the ninja clan regarded Xia Yan as the successor of the Wall of Fire or a fool, their instructions to their children are the same. Follow teacher Xia Yan and strive to add another secret technique to our clan. Even those ninjas who were dissatisfied with Xia Yan because of the keening cards have also given the same instructions to their children. Some people even pray for Xia Yan every day, fearing that he will be cursed to death by the seal class before he can fully reveal the projection technique. The young ninjas naturally don't understand the elders' fickle hearts. But in fact, they don't need their instructions. The young ninjas will also study the seal class well. After all, the keening card game invented by teacher Xia Yan is unique. They don't want to be kicked out of this course because of poor grades and lose the qualification to play this game. They have something to ask of Xia Yan, so they naturally change from being a devil to a good student. As a result, Kushina, who was in charge of the distribution of jewel discs, became the 9,000-year-old that they dared not offend, for fear that they would not be given the opportunity to test the cards in the future. Especially after the senior students spread the news of Kushina's great achievements in defeating all the opponents in the ninja school, the young ninjas became even closer and more admiring of Kushina. So much so that now they are respectful when they see her. Seeing that the whole classroom was quiet again, Kushina nodded with satisfaction, sat back in her seat, and continued to correct the students' homework. She held a red pen in her right hand and marked the mistakes in the homework one by one. After making sure that there were no omissions, she wrote 2 lines of comments under the students' homework. Finally, she closed the homework book and placed it on the podium on her left-hand side. You can see that there is already a small stack of homework books there. Kushina moved her wrist, turned her head to look at the thick stack of homework that had not been corrected on her right-hand side, and couldn't help but sigh. Although she had just threatened the students that she would increase the amount of homework, how could she dare to do that? After all, she was the one who graded the homework. Isn't this just hurting each other? Even with the current amount of homework, she didn't know when she would finish grading. Xia Yan, this bad guy. Kushina couldn't help but accuse Xia Yan, this unscrupulous boss, in her heart. Since the sealing technique course became the most popular course in the ninja school, many people have applied to change to this course. If it weren't for the fact that the sealing technique course is very expensive, while Xia had to increase the difficulty of application, I'm afraid that in the end this course would have changed from an elective course to a compulsory course. With more students taking this course, there are naturally more homework to grade. As an assistant teacher, Kushina's burden is naturally heavier. Especially after Xia Yan graded a few homeworks, he became a hands-off boss, which made Kushina even worse. And he actually has a set of twisted logic. It's easy to know the correct answer, but not the reason. Kushina was asked to have a deep understanding of the knowledge of sealing techniques by summarizing the reasons why students make mistakes. Kushina naturally didn't believe it and thought that Xia Yan was shirking the responsibility of correcting homework. She also complained to Mito's grandmother. Unexpectedly, after hearing what Xia Yan said, Mito's grandmother actually betrayed and supported Xia Yan. Kushina, who was at a loss, had to admit that she was unlucky and took over the task of correcting homework. As a result, since she used the ideas Xia Yan said to correct homework, Kushina actually gained a lot. The correct answers are all the same, and the wrong answers are all strange. In understanding the students' various and strange mistakes, she has a deep understanding of why the correct answers are correct. The knowledge of sealing techniques that she had memorized by force under the urging of Mito's grandmother has finally become her own. Therefore, although Kushina didn't say it, she was actually very grateful to Xia Yan. Unfortunately, the only disadvantage of this method is that it takes a lot of effort and time to correct homework. Add to that the mountain of homework, Kushina's gratitude to Xia Yan quickly disappeared. At the same time, the voices of students playing cards kept coming into Kushina's ears. She couldn't help but look at the fierce battle on the field, a little envious. It was as if there was a little devil who looked like Xia Yan in her mind tempting her. Since you have been working for so long, why not take a break and play a game? Kushina hesitated and felt that what this guy said seemed to make sense. The little devil said again, otherwise, take out the deck to see and relieve your craving. Kushina hurriedly shook her head and threw the abominable little devil out of her mind. Then a little angel who looked like Grandma Mito appeared in her heart. With a holy smile on her face. Play well, work well, and practice well, Kushina, you must remember that, right? Kushina nodded vigorously. Now is working time, not time to play cards. Kushina patted her cheeks, encouraged herself, then picked up a homework book from the top of the pile of homework and began to mark it. Not long after, someone else came to the podium and interrupted her work. Kushina looked up and found that it was Obito. Something was missed again during the review. How can it be fixed? Thank you, book friend 202105199073952 for the reward, and thank you for the reward from Wifagi. Chapter 35. 3 good assistants. While Uchiha Obito has appeared. Go ahead. Kushina. Kushina used to glare. Obito. You didn't hand in your homework again today, right? The effect was outstanding. Obito's defensive power dropped. Obito used round pupils, blinked his eyes and handed over his homework book, trying to get away with it. No, I just handed it in a little late, Hilly. Unfortunately, it didn't work. Kushina used the slap. She took Obito's homework, rolled it up and knocked him on the head lightly with annoyance. Hitting the vital point, Obito fell down. Hand it in so late again, I won't accept your homework next time. Obito, who was covering his head and cosplaying as Ranran, couldn't help but muttered in a low voice after hearing this. It's because teacher Xia Yan assigned too much homework. Everyone has finished it, why is it only you who can't finish it? Kushina couldn't help but blurt out. But as soon as she said this, she couldn't help but be slightly stunned. Because she found that this sentence pattern sounded so familiar. Everyone is AAA, why is it only you BBB? Isn't this what the teachers often said to her when she got into trouble in the ninja school? Why do I have to be the same as others? She used to hate such words, but she didn't expect that there would be a day when she would say such words to her students. This is just like what Xia Yan said, the Dragon Slayer eventually becomes the dragon. Thinking of this, Kushina couldn't help but look at Obito, who was dejected by her words. Speaking of this child is also an alien like her before. It's just that she was regarded as an alien because of her identity as an outsider, while Obito was an Uchiha who was very unlike Uchiha. He was not only excluded by his clan members, but also not recognized by others. He was neither human nor outside, and gradually became an alien. Kushina saw a little bit of her past shadow in Obito, took a deep breath, opened Obito's homework, and began to mark it. Obito was waiting on the side with a nervous look on his face, standing like a minion. It made him more nervous when Kushina wrote on his notebook than when she cut him. Every time he saw Kushina mark out a mistake he made, it felt like being cut on his body. It wasn't without reason that Obito was so scared. He had heard that because there were too many students in the sealing technique class, teacher Xia Yan seemed to be planning to streamline it, and the target was naturally students like him who had less than ideal grades. If he was kicked out of this course, he would not only lose the right to play that keening games in the future, but also lose the opportunity to tell stories to students who didn't take this course. Of course, more importantly, this would also reduce the time he and Lin had in class together. Obito naturally couldn't accept this result. I could have endured the darkness if I had never seen the light. After seeing so many new and interesting things in teacher Xia Yan's class, Obito didn't want to go back to his boring campus life before. Soon, Kushina finished marking Obito's homework. She pondered for a moment, and did not write any comments on it. She turned to Obito and said, "You have improved compared to before. It seems that you have at least made an effort to learn." Obito's face lit up immediately after hearing this. But it was too early for him to be happy. Kushina's next words made him feel heavy in his heart. "But you still made too many low-level mistakes. For example, here, you wrote chakra for chakra, and the problem of calculating chakra flow here, you calculated the answer correctly, but why is the unit ka? Which world uses ka as the unit of chakra measurement?" Kushina pointed out Obito's mistakes in his homework one by one, and Obito felt even colder when he heard it. He always felt that she seemed to be laying the groundwork for something. Could she really persuade him to quit? Kushina did not notice Obito's abnormality. After she finished talking about Obito's mistakes, she paused for a few seconds, and then looked at Obito again. Sealing is a very comprehensive subject, and it requires the use of knowledge from many other subjects. The fundamental reason why you have such a hard time learning sealing is that you didn't listen carefully in class in other subjects, so you didn't lay a solid foundation. Obito lowered his head in shame, unable to refute at all. It was as if she had seen it with her own eyes, exactly. Because when he first went to school, the teacher taught very basic knowledge in order to take care of students of commoner origin. So Obito, who had learned these from his clan when he was young, was naturally a little lazy and didn't listen carefully. But he didn't expect that the learning tasks in the ninja school were so heavy. In a moment of carelessness, he couldn't understand what the teacher said in class. And his only relative, Grandma, was just an ordinary person and couldn't help him with his studies. If it weren't for tutoring him from time to time, Obito's grades would probably be even worse now. Kushina looked at Obito, who was dejected and didn't know where to put his hands, and her deliberately stern face softened a little. In fact, the reason why she could understand Obito's problem so well was very simple. Because she had the same situation before. As a result, when Mito-sama began to teach her their sealing technique, she suffered a lot because of it. After all, sooner or later, you will pay for what you have done. Kushina knew that if she left it alone, the child would probably repeat her mistakes. And this time, Obito might not be able to find a knowledgeable old man to help him complete these knowledge. Recalling the teachings of Mito-sama, an idea came to Kushina's mind. So she said in a casual tone, "Although you have a lot of problems, it's good that you have only been in class for one semester, and there is still time to make up for these basics. How about this, when you have time, I will tutor you." As if it was just a trivial matter. But as soon as she finished speaking, Obito raised his head in disbelief, his eyes widened. "Really? Won't this bother you?" At the end, Obito's voice was already a little nasal. "I don't know why, I feel a little sour in my nose. It's probably because apart from Grandma and Lin, no one has been so kind to him for a long time." Kushina's eyes were gentle, she reached out and touched Obito's head and said, "It's okay, after all, tutoring students is also my job as an assistant teacher." After saying that, she showed a warm smile. "Thank you, Kushina-sensei." After agreeing on a tutoring time with Kushina, Obito bowed deeply to Kushina, then left happily with his homework book. In his hand, he also held a small bag of small bone-shaped cookies that Kushina gave him. "Kushina-sensei," Kushina looked at Obito's figure jumping away, and the corners of her mouth curled up slightly. She thought this name was quite nice. Seeing Obito always reminded her of the past when she was in the ninja school. Time flies so fast. In the blink of an eye, she is no longer the tomato that is ridiculed, nor the blood-red pepper that is feared, but the assistant teacher of the sealing technique class of the ninja school, Kushina-sensei. Grandma, do I count this as doing a good job? Kushina said to herself. But we can't relax yet, we still have to practice well next. Oh, don't forget to have fun, I have to play a few games with Xia Yan later. I can't let the bad guy Xia Yan go until I squeeze him dry. But now, Kushina looked at the mountain of homework, and her face fell again. She slapped her face hard. What did Xia Yan say? It seems to be, work hard. Struggle. Only GE. Thank you reader 153117088096384 for the reward. Thank you book friend 20209071428267669 for the reward. Chapter 36 Xia Yan's plan. Happy times always pass quickly, and in the blink of an eye it was time to go home from school again. Of course, this was for those little ninjas who could play cards. For Kushina, who had been marking homework for the whole day, today was another long day. Fortunately, there was a little episode with Obito, which made her gain a little confidence in being a teacher, and she was in a good mood. She had just agreed with Obito that she would tutor him after school when she had time. However, in order to avoid other students saying that she was biased, Kushina also specifically told Obito, the big mouth, not to talk about this matter everywhere. Obito also agreed. After all, secret lessons after school sounded very exciting. As the school bell rang, the little ninjas begged Kushina as usual to let them play a few more games before closing the door. Kushina also cruelly rejected them as usual. Seeing everyone's grief-stricken look, she felt even happier. After the little ninjas left dejectedly, Kushina locked the front and back doors of the classroom, then returned to the sealing art office with 6 jewel discs in her hands, humming a song. As soon as she entered the door, she saw Xia Yan writing and drawing on a drawing spread out on the table. She didn't know what he was doing. Is the sun going to set in the east today? Xia Yan, you haven't left after school? Kushina couldn't help but joked. No wonder she was so surprised, because Xia Yan always adhered to the concept of no delay in class, no overtime after school. He left as soon as the bell rang, and he finished work as soon as the bell rang. He waved his sleeves gently, without taking away a cloud. According to Xia Yan, this was his last stubbornness as a worker. Unfortunately, Xia Yan didn't seem to listen to Kushina's jokes at all, but just raised his left hand and shook it a few times, as a greeting. Kushina shrugged, didn't care, put the jewel disc in her hand on the table, and returned to her seat. It has been almost a month since Kushina got to know Xia Yan. She knew that Xia Yan seemed to be humorous and knowledgeable, and the perfect teacher in everyone's mind, but he was actually a little off-key behind the scenes. Especially once this guy got into this state, it was difficult for him to take care of other things. So although Kushina was a little curious about what Xia Yan was doing, she didn't bother him. She sat in her seat, took out a book that was a little curled up, opened a page at random and started reading. There were a few big words written on the cover of the book. Daily Care and Taming of Large Dogs. This book was suddenly recommended to her by Xia Yan some time ago. Kushina didn't quite understand it at first. She didn't have a dog, so why did Xia Yan let her read this book? And he also said something mysterious like the principles are universal. But out of trust in Xia Yan, Kushina still did as she was told and found time to read the book. Then Kushina realized it. So Master Xia Yan wanted to tell me that when getting along with students, I must first establish my leader status and establish authority in the students' hearts. You can't get real respect just by getting along with them. Kushina not only understood this truth, but also put it into practice, applying the knowledge she learned from the book to her teaching assistant work. As she expected, the little ninjas really became more obedient. Sure enough, the principles of everything in this world are really common. Unfortunately, Kushina later shared her experience with Xia Yan, but Xia Yan's expression after listening was very strange. After a long while, Xia Yan put down his pen and stretched his body. But when his eyes caught Kushina's figure, his expression became a little surprised. Hey, when did you come back? Why didn't I notice? Kushina put the book down helplessly. I came back a long time ago. You just greeted me. Don't you remember? Xia Yan was slightly stunned, and then said, Really? It seems that I was too absorbed in the class and forgot about it. By the way, how was the classroom today? Of course it's the same as always. Those who draw talismans draw talismans, those who play cards play cards, those who correct homework correct homework. At the end, Kushina's eyes became a little resentful. It's good that nothing happened. Xia Yan looked away at the right time, not intending to continue to delve into this topic. So he changed the subject and said, I have come up with something new again, how about you help me look into it? Sure enough, when she heard that Xia Yan had a new invention, Kushina immediately threw the homework out of her mind. She immediately stood up by the table and quickly got close to Xia Yan. Because she rushed too fast, the girl's silky red long hair fell on Xia Yan due to inertia, and a faint fragrance came to her nose. Ah, sorry. Kushina said embarrassedly. It's okay. Xia Yan leaned to the side so that she could see the contents on the white paper more clearly. Kushina leaned forward curiously and saw that the white paper was filled with various card designs. Therefore, her first reaction was that the third wave of Kukining cards would be released, and she was a little excited. Unfortunately, Kushina quickly denied this guess. Because she recognized that these were the cards that had already appeared in the first and second waves, but the styles of these cards in front of her were completely different from the previous ones, and they looked more exquisite. Even the place on the card that used to draw runes has now been changed to a picture, with the corresponding characters or ninjutsu. Although she didn't know what the purpose of Xia Yan's design of these cards was, it didn't prevent Kushina from praising them. These cards look so beautiful. Much better than those that Xia Yan gave to the students to play with. Xia Yan smiled as a matter of course. Of course they look good, after all, they are used to sell for money. How can you cheat the money of otakus if you don't make the card pictures more exquisite? Sell for money. Kushina turned her head and looked at Xia Yan, with a look of surprise. Are you going to sell these cards to students? Hectares. Xia Yan, the great devil, you finally showed your true colors. I didn't, don't talk nonsense. Xia Yan waved his hands and said, if I really dare to do this, then the next day by Waco-sama I will dare to make the curse of the sealing technique class come true. Kushina was amused and chuckled. Then she hesitated and said, since it's not for students, is it for adults to play with? Why not? Xia Yan asked with a smile. In fact, I found that not only children, but also adults' entertainment activities are very monotonous. They are either eating, gambling, what is it? Kushina blinked her big watery eyes. She looked like I'm very curious. Ahem, that's it, helping others, helping some ragged young ladies, oh, I see. Kushina suddenly realized, Mito-san also often donates money to orphanages and so on. Yes, that's it. Xia Yan, who had smoothed over the words, breathed a sigh of relief, and after a perfunctory answer, he got back to the point. So I plan to let adults experience the joy of playing Gaijin cards. Since the cost of dual discs is too high and it is difficult to popularize, my plan is to do a pilot and open a tavern first. Put dozens of machines that can play Gaijin in it, so that adults can come here to drink, play cards, and relax after work every day. Cards plus tavern, isn't this quite promising? And the cards designed on the drawings just now are actually prepared to be sold to them as the main way for the tavern to make a profit. As he said this, Xia Yan touched his chin again. Speaking of which, the name of this tavern has not been chosen yet. Well, since the selling point is Gaijin cards, then the name of this tavern should be called Gaijin Tavern. Chapter 37 Daily Life with a Shelf Life. But, although Kushina's blood boiled after hearing Xia Yan's plan, she sincerely hoped that the tavern would be built soon so that she could fight with more duelists from all over the world. However, perhaps because of preconceived notions, Kushina always regarded this game as a child's play. Thinking of a group of grown men wearing dual discs and saying it's my turn. Draw a card. Kushina felt inexplicably ashamed of them, and was so embarrassed that she could use her feet to dig out the tavern that Xia Yan wanted to open. There was a strong sense of disobedience. She didn't know that Xia Yan had a word specifically used to describe this situation in his previous life, that is, the style of painting is wrong. Seeing that Kushina couldn't explain it, Xia Yan snapped his fingers and laughed. Speaking of which, Kushina, you'll be an adult in a year or two. Will you think that Gaijin cards are not interesting by then? Hearing this, Kushina tilted her head and thought about it. A few years later, she quickly imagined herself with a figure like Zarnad, playing cards with a dual disc. Kaiksu, it really looks like fun. Kushina nodded helplessly, but still had some doubts. But, this game is fun, but is there really anyone willing to spend real money to buy these small pieces of paper? Although these cards were designed very beautifully by Xia Yan, they are still small pieces of paper after all. Not to mention that according to Xia Yan's previous design ideas, these cards have a number of uses, which would make it even more difficult to buy them, right? Unfortunately, Kushina was still too naive, not knowing that Xia Yan's bottom line was even lower than she thought. What, buying cards? Xia Yan couldn't help but sneer, how can there be such a good thing? He shook his head and laughed, opened the drawer of the table, flipped through it, and took out a concept map and handed it to Kushina. Kushina took a look and saw a scene drawn in the form of a sketch. There were two people sitting on either side of the table, with a few little figures standing in front of each table, looking like characters from Keening cards. From the whole picture, they should be playing a Keening card game with a projection that was scaled down. Because the space in the tavern is limited, I reduced the size of the projection. Of course, there are also one-to-one imaging game consoles, but that's not what we should focus on now. Xia Yan pointed at a place on the concept map. Kushina looked at where he pointed, and saw the place she had been concerned about just now. She found that the two people in the battle were not wearing dual discs or holding cards in their hands. Instead, those cards floated in front of them as if they were cast with ninjutsu. Then Kushina heard Xia Yan explain. The cards in front of them were actually projections, which I integrated into the machine. So in fact, they only bought the right to use virtual cards. Kushina's eyes widened when she heard it, and her pupils were full of disbelief. Virtual cards? And only the right to use them? Listen, are you talking human language? Originally, Kushina thought that Xia Yan's plan to sell small pieces of paper was outrageous, but she didn't expect that Xia Yan's idea was even more outrageous. What he planned to sell was actually virtual cards. It was really outrageous. The mother opened the door to outrageousness, outrageous to the extreme. For a moment, a feeling of worry arose from the bottom of Kushina's heart. She felt that Xia Yan must have been blinded by the illusion that gaijin cards were popular in ninja schools. After all, gaijin cards in ninja schools are provided to students free of charge as a teaching aid. In addition, the little ninjas have never seen the world and there are not many entertainment activities, so they will naturally be deeply attracted by gaijin cards. Even if gaijin cards are loved by adults, these adult ninjas who are on the edge of a knife and have seen a lot are really willing to spend money to buy virtual cards that can only be seen but not touched. After listening to Xia Yan's crazy idea, Kushina couldn't help but feel that selling small pieces of paper was not something difficult to accept. Seeing Xia Yan's confident look, Kushina knew that he would definitely not listen to her cold water at this time. So she decided to take a roundabout route and get more information before making plans. By the way, Xia Yan, how did you suddenly think of doing this? Kushina asked. Actually, I had a similar plan before I returned to Konoha, otherwise I would not have been able to take out those cards and dual discs all at once. It's just that I had to travel around the land of fire because of the mission, so this plan has been shelved. Xia Yan explained to Kushina while rolling up their drawings and putting them in that drawer. I'm working at the ninja school now, right? I just happen to have a lot of free time, so I'm going to do it. Besides, I'm already a special genin, and I have a little savings, so it's time to start a business. Actually, this is not surprising. Most teachers in the ninja school have similar side jobs. After all, being a ninja is a job for the young, and the risks are high. You don't know when you might get injured and stop being a ninja. You have to consider the transformation after retirement. As a ninja from a commoner background, I don't have the ninja clan to back me up, so I have to make plans early. Kushina, who wanted to find some flaws in Xia Yan's reasons, twitched her mouth more and more as she listened. She thought Xia Yan would come up with some whimsical reasons like selling virtual cards, but she didn't expect the real reason to be so plain and simple. It's so down to earth. If someone who doesn't know hears it, they might think it's a middle-aged ninja holding a thermos bottle with wolf bees in his hand talking. Hey, Xia Yan, you're only 16 years old. Do you need to think so far ahead? You're making it hard for me, who's already 15, to do anything. Knowing that Xia Yan had made plans for her future for decades, Kushina, who only thought about how to play more games of Kenin every day, began to get anxious. She felt that at her age and at this stage, she shouldn't be able to sleep. Of course there is a more important reason. Xia Yan saw that Kushina looked like she was doubting her life, and knew that she had sold out her anxiety. He smiled secretly and changed the subject. Kushina, you also know that learning the seal technique is very expensive. So have you ever thought that if nothing unexpected happens, such a large class like ours is actually impossible to maintain and is destined to be short-lived? Even now, although Lord Bywaco has added funds several times, the income and expenditure of this course can only barely maintain. When we formally learn to draw runes later, we can't rely on the cards I made to fool around, and that will cost a lot of money. And the cost of learning the seal technique cannot be borne by the school alone. Many students from ordinary families don't have the financial resources to support after-school practice. So it is obvious that sooner or later, the seal technique class will return to its original appearance, that is, a niche course with only a few cats and 2 cats in each grade. Originally, Kushina was a little surprised to hear Xia Yan suddenly talk about the seal technique class. However, as Xia Yan talked, she gradually didn't care about the matter of the Pekinan tavern. The facts listed by Xia Yan hit Kushina's heart like a heavy hammer, making her suddenly startled and sweating. If the number of students in this course drops significantly, then she will no longer be needed as an assistant teacher. For a moment, all kinds of memories came to her mind like a revolving lantern. While correcting homework, she listened to the laughter of the little ninjas playing cards. Xia Yan's various novel and interesting teaching methods in the sealing technique class. After school every day, she played a few rounds of Pekinan with Xia Yan. Although she was defeated repeatedly, she still enjoyed it. In the evening, she had to share her day's experience with Grandma Mito to make her happy, and finally fell asleep with the expectation of tomorrow. Although it was only a short month, Kushina had unknowingly gotten used to this kind of life and fell in love with this kind of life. And she thought that this kind of life would continue forever. However, Xia Yan's words ruthlessly revealed a fact. That is, these daily routines that she thought would continue forever are actually like beautiful castles made of sand, which may collapse at any time because of a small wave. Kushina, who realized this fact, felt empty in her heart for a while. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novel, as there you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 38, Fighting to Maintain Routine. After a long time, Kushina finally recovered from the shock. She was still unwilling to accept this fact. She found a loophole in Xia Yan's statement and asked subconsciously, then, why did Master Bywaco allow so many people to change to this course in the first place? Since the number of students had to be reduced in the end, why didn't he limit the number at the beginning? Of course, it was to select students with a talent for sealing techniques. Xia Yan answered Kushina's question calmly. Sealing techniques don't just have this cool use of sealing monsters. In most cases, it's actually used in the construction and maintenance of various barriers, as well as in inconspicuous tasks such as making detonating talismans, storage scrolls and other practical ninja tools. Behind these boring jobs, there are a large number of grassroots sealing techniques ninjas working diligently. As an important source of income for the village, sealing techniques ninjas are naturally in short supply. That's why the ninja school offers this course to teach basic sealing techniques to ordinary students. However, even so, how to find talented people with sealing techniques is still a long-standing problem for ninja schools. As he spoke, Xia Yan flicked his hand and took out a card for students to practice drawing talismans. And my technology can greatly reduce the cost of learning the seal technique in the early stage. So Bywaco-sama and his people will naturally change their recruitment strategy and come up with the idea of casting a wide net to catch more fish. As long as they spend a little more money, they can select more seal technique seedlings, so why not do it? Kushina tried harder to understand what Xia Yan said. She only now realized that there were so many considerations for the establishment of this seal technique course. And she was obviously a disciple of the seal technique Master Mito, and she was accustomed to various barrier talismans, but she didn't seriously think about where they came from. She didn't know that there was a group of unknown seal technique ninjas who were working behind the scenes. However, she couldn't care about these for the time being, because she had more important problems at this time. What about the students who were judged to have no talent for seal techniques? Kushina couldn't help but think of Obito, who had just patted his chest and promised to study hard. After the selection, they can only be cleared out. After all, it is not cost-effective to spend resources on them next time. Xia Yan replied calmly. It's very realistic, very rational, and the most correct approach. There's nothing wrong with it. After all, without enough talent, it's not a good thing to continue studying, either for themselves or for the ninja school. The more Kushina listened, the colder her heart became. She opened her mouth, but couldn't find any words to refute. Her head also lowered unconsciously. But at this moment, a soft breath sounded in the quiet office. Although it was just 2 short words, it sounded like the sound of nature to Kushina, and she couldn't help but look up at Xia Yan. At this time, Xia Yan had a playful smile on his face. But, talent and the like are things that are difficult to quantify. It's impossible to make a judgment based solely on the initial results. Even if Obito, who is at the bottom of the class now, may become a very powerful ninja in the future, who knows? After all, even Lord Jiraiya, one of the 3 ninjas, was a complete loser in the ninja school. If it weren't for the 3rd Hokage's keen eye for talent, there wouldn't be that famous hero in the ninja world today. So although I agree that people without talent shouldn't waste too much time on sealing techniques, I don't think it's necessary to make a judgment so early. At least when they are in the 4th grade, it won't be too late to judge whether they are suitable for continuing to study sealing techniques. As long as the teaching content is arranged properly, even if they don't study sealing techniques in the end, what they have learned before will help them in all aspects, and it won't be useless. At least it's more useful than to have fired class. The more Kushina listened, the more she felt that Xia Yan was making sense. Her eyes became brighter and brighter, and her head nodded like a chicken pecking at rice. What you said makes so much sense, Xia Yan. Xia Yan smiled slightly, and then said, but to achieve this, in the final analysis, this course must have a certain degree of self-generating ability, and it cannot rely entirely on the funds provided by the school to operate. And my business is one of those attempts. In fact, I have drafted a school enterprise strategic cooperation framework agreement with Lord Baiwako, which stipulates that my tavern and possible industries that may appear in the future will have in-depth cooperation with the ninja school. For example, if this Ninja Tavern can be promoted to the entire Fire Country, it will require mass production of game consoles, and many simple parts in it can be handed over to senior students to make. I call this work study. And after graduation, students can also directly enter the factory that produces game consoles to work. They will enter the factory right after graduation, and everyone will have a bright future. In this way, students not only get training, but also get paid, and the funds provided by the tavern will also be used as the funds of the ninja school, and part of the subsidy will be used for this course to allow it to continue to maintain its current scale. It really kills 2 birds with 1 stone. Of course, this is just my fantasy. Kushina, you don't know how strange her expression was when I asked Baiwako-sama to sign the agreement. It was as if I had drawn a big cake for her to eat. The sound of Kushina being amused did not come out as expected. Xia Yan looked at it subconsciously, but was shocked all of a sudden. Hey, Kushina, what's wrong with you? He saw that Kushina's eyes were red at this time, and her eyes were mixed with emotion and shame. Kushina never expected that Xia Yan, who left after class and went off work after school every day, actually did so much for the students behind their backs. Thinking that Xia Yan even arranged career plans for students to enter the factory after graduation, Kushina couldn't help but feel touched. At the same time, Kushina recalled that she was proud of herself because of Obito's matter, and she felt ashamed again. This mixture of emotion and shame made Kushina make a decision quickly. Xia Yan, I've decided. I actually have a little savings. Why not invest it all in this tavern? Kushina decided to contribute her little to Xia Yan's business. Although she was still not optimistic about the prospects of this tavern and had no idea how much of Xia Yan's blueprint could be realized, the money was worth it just because Xia Yan cared about the students. Of course, no problem. Xia Yan smiled and stretched out a hand to Kushina after hearing this. He talked for a long time, naturally just to get Kushina to join. After all, Xia Yan was very confident in his business. In his previous life, whether it was the physical Yu-Gi-Oh or the virtual Hearthstone cards, they were all money-printing monsters. Even if he was not used to the ninja world, he could make a fortune by selling at half the price. As a commoner with no background, Xia Yan naturally had to find a backer in advance to avoid all kinds of troubles. Although Baiwako used her eyes to give him crazy hints when discussing the cooperation between the ninja school and the tavern, indicating that she was willing to give him an investment. She looked like a rich woman supporting a young man. But Xia Yan also knew that she was actually extending an olive branch to him on behalf of the Sarutobi clan. However, because he was worried that he would be eaten up without leaving any residue, Xia Yan decided to reject the old rich woman and turn to the arms of the young rich woman. Although Kushina doesn't have much money now, as the heir to part of Uzumaki Mito's property, Kushina's wealth is just like her small body, and the future is promising. And Xia Yan chose Kushina as his partner, not because of her money, but because of her body, no, its background. After all, she is not only the most beloved child of Mito-sama, but also has a good relationship with Princess Trisanad, and is also that first candidate for the Nine-Tails Jingareki. In Konoha, she is simply an invincible plugin. Although I don't know when this plugin can be renewed, but as long as Xia Yan can safely pass the initial development period, he will not fear any challenge. In this way, the ninja school, the source of talent, Kushina, who has an unfathomable background and connections, and Xia Yan, who has core technology, form the three cornerstones of Xia Yan's grand blueprint. Xia Yan's business layout has also taken shape. Just after the two of them had a preliminary discussion on the investment, Kushina seemed to have made a decision in her heart, and suddenly said to Xia Yan, "Xia Yan, there is one more thing I want to ask you." "What?" Xia Yan asked. "I want to know how strong I am." Kushina looked serious. The conversation with Xia Yan just now gave Kushina a sense of urgency. She can't be mudly held anymore. Because she realized that even if her daily life suddenly collapsed, she would not have any spare strength to resist. In order to maintain her current daily life, she must lend a helping hand to Xia Yan. Assist him in realizing that seemingly whimsical plan. Since she can't help Xia Yan with business, at least she can't drag him down in terms of strength. In order to maintain her current daily life, Kushina said firmly, "Natsuhiko, I want you to help me practice." Chapter 39 Labor Capital Conflict. As night fell, Xia Yan, as usual, solved the problem of dinner at Xuanxia Ramen restaurant and then walked towards home. Along the way, he was still thinking about what happened in the sealing art office. Although what Kushina said made him think a little bit wrong at first, as she continued to talk, Xia Yan also understood what she meant. In fact, she just wanted Xia Yan to practice with her from time to time to assist her in her practice. Although she would usually compete with Mito Grandma or Trisanad's sister, but because of the huge difference in strength, she could not accurately judge how much she was. Xia Yan, who was her peer, had traveled through the ninja world and was well informed and experienced, was just a perfect benchmark for Kushina to recognize how strong she was. However, in the ninja world, inviting others to practice together is a very sensitive thing. After all, in the battle of ninjas, intelligence occupies a very important position. If it is not a relative or friend, generally, such a request will not be made to the other party casually. Although Kushina is a bit nervous, she is not unaware of this taboo. Therefore, Xia Yan was a little bit happy about Kushina's request to him. Because this means that Kushina's friendliness towards him has been raised unknowingly. It seems that I can continue to increase the intensity of bullying her in the future, and I am not afraid that she will suddenly become a red name. Xia Yan couldn't help but have such thoughts in his heart. As for Kushina's invitation to spar, Xia Yan finally agreed. After all, this is obviously a special event when the favorability reaches a certain level, so of course it must be completed. Moreover, since he didn't go out on missions, Xia Yan found that he lacked practical training, his body was a little stiff, and he had no chance to test the newly developed moves, so he had always planned to solve this problem. Originally, he wanted to find Ayakaku teacher to be the lucky audience for him to test his moves. But since there was a fragrant girl who volunteered to be the experimental subject, Xia Yan naturally would not continue to choose the greasy uncle option. After a while, Xia Yan returned to his home. Unlike usual, today, when he entered the house, he did not hear the footsteps of the three little ones running over. The whole house was quiet. However, Xia Yan was not surprised. He changed his shoes and went into the house. After putting down the sundries, he walked down the stairs and came to his basement. The basement was not large, and was filled with various materials and sundries. There were also some tools for processing materials placed in the corner. Xia Yan walked straight to an empty wall and stood there, and quickly formed a seal with his hands. Then, the wall in front of him began to emerge with complicated and obscure runes, and finally formed a circular magic circle. A chakra wave rippled out from the center of the magic circle, silently passed through Xia Yan's body, and covered the entire basement. After waiting for a while, Xia Yan heard the sound of a mechanism. Then the floor in front of him began to separate to the left and right, revealing a staircase leading to the lower level. After the sound of the mechanism stopped, Xia Yan walked down the stairs. Click, click, click. After Xia Yan walked down, the floor closed automatically. The entire basement returned to its usual tranquility. Xia Yan walked down the passage, and at the same time, he raised his hand lightly, and a ball of light emitting soft light appeared in front of him, illuminating the originally dark passage as if it were daytime. Not long after Xia Yan walked, he came to the secret basement deeper underground. It can be seen that this basement was built by digging out a space underground with earth escape. The area is not small and the lights are bright, but there are a lot of debris and dust on the ground, which is obviously not yet completed. At the same time, it is filled with all kinds of strange equipment and instruments, which makes people feel a sense of mystery. It is worth mentioning that there are also many rune spells drawn on the walls of the basement. They form a common shielding array. It can avoid the prying of various chakra means, even including the white eyes. It can be said that it is a must-have array for every ninja family in Konohagakure. Even ordinary ninjas will bite their teeth and buy themselves a set after saving a little. To be honest, if there is no such thing, I'm afraid no ninja would be willing to be neighbors with the Hyuga clan. After all, no one likes to live a life where they may be spied on at any moment. However, the Hyuga clan does not have to worry about this thing turning their Byakugan into a decoration on the battlefield. In addition to the high price of this shielding array and the trouble of setting it up. More importantly, in the eyes of the Byakugan, the area where the shielding array is affected will become pitch black. Although it cannot be seen through, this situation is like a firefly in the dark, which is more likely to attract attention and cannot achieve the effect of sneak attacks. In the center of the room, a strange machine with a large area is operating, and various indicator lights on it are constantly flashing. It can be seen that it is made up of computers, which are still very rare now, and various materials engraved with rune spells. This chakra punch-style big guy is actually the original body of Xia Yan's chakra intelligent brain, the prototype he originally made. Whenever Xia Yan came here and saw this old friend, he would think of the glorious years when he sealed it in a scroll and carried it with him, and collected various materials to upgrade it while carrying out missions in various places. When people get old, they always like to reminisce about the past. The 16-year-old Xia Yan sighed. Although Xia Yan now has a more advanced chakra intelligent brain made of chakra metal, this machine continues to shine in this basement, assisting his clone in various research work. It is his important partner. Just like the Pokemon that Xiaozi threw at Professor Rogue's house at the end of each season. Thinking of the youthful years he spent with it, Xia Yan couldn't help but feel moved. So he reached out and patted his old friend hard to show his condolences. As a result, as soon as he finished patting, his old friend sprayed out a handful of screws from somewhere, and white smoke began to come out of several joints, making a sharp whistle sound. Almost stretched out his legs and died suddenly. Xia Yan's raised hand froze instantly, and he didn't dare to move at all. After picking up the huge wrench, taking out 2 rolls of tape, and skillfully performing first aid measures on the old friend, Xia Yan finally breathed a sigh of relief. I think there shouldn't be any big problems. He comforted himself. Could it be possible to blow up the entire Konoha? Then he would wait for the clones to have time to hand it over to them to solve. Xia Yan clapped his hands, walked around the machine and came to the other end of the basement. Here Xia Yan finally saw his 3 infant clones. The 3 little guys were surrounded by an unfinished machine, holding hammers, wrenches and electric drills in their hands, and were working hard on the installation. The scene was like a child driving a big car, and it made people want to call the police. Hearing the footsteps of Xia Yan coming over, the 3 little ones were not as enthusiastic as usual. They just glanced at him lightly, and then lowered their heads to continue their busy work. Xia Yan scratched his head. The 3 little guys didn't play that dad joke today, which made him a little uncomfortable. Sure enough, every boy likes others to call him dad, no matter whether the other party is male or female. Even himself. However, from the brief glance at the 3 little ones just now, he still noticed the resentment that was about to overflow from their eyes. Resentment from the workers. But there was nothing he could do about it. In order to make all the machines needed before the tavern opened, Xia Yan even stopped the research tasks for the 3 little ones, and asked them to concentrate on rushing out these machines. Working day and night in this basement, it is no wonder that they have such great resentment. Although the 3 little ones are essentially his shadow clones, Xia Yan still feels a little guilty. After all, the 3 little ones are actually experiencing all this hard work in person, and he is just receiving memories when he is sleeping, as if he had a dream. That's much more comfortable. The only thing that worries him is that recently when he dreams, he often dreams of himself being hanged under a street light. Chapter 40 Xia Yan's real plan. Although the 3 little ones ignored him, Xia Yan still walked over to check their progress. Seeing the 3 finished Keening game consoles placed behind that 3 little ones, Xia Yan couldn't help but smile and nodded with satisfaction. According to this progress, it looks like it should be ready for the tavern's opening day. Number 1 in red took a casual glance and happened to see Xia Yan's capitalist smile, and couldn't help but said sarcastically, Hey, isn't this the big boss Yushin? Why did you come to inspect our work in person? Xia Yan's smile froze slightly. But before he could reply, no. 2, who was wearing a blue shirt and had just installed a part, said impatiently, no. 1, you can talk, but don't stop. Fuck, even if you hang yourself, you have to give people a break. No. 1 scratched his silver curly hair frantically, and we're all clones, why should the clone embarrass the clone? No. 3, who was wearing a green shirt, also said weakly at this time, you don't quarrel anymore, quarreling is a bad thing. Shut up, no. 3. No. 1 and no. 2 shouted at the same time. No. 3. Ouch, why is it always me who gets hurt? It seems that everyone is very busy, so don't disturb them. Xia Yan silently stepped back, not daring to disturb his clone's work. He walked to the control panel of the prototype and began his daily work recently. Xia Yan first took out a storage card and put it on the table beside to unseal it. After the white smoke dissipated, 6 jewel discs appeared on the table, which was the ones used by students to test cards during the day. Xia Yan picked up a jewel disc with his left hand, and with his right hand fingers gathering chakra, he rhythmically tapped several hidden locations on the jewel disc. With a click, the bottom of the jewel disc opened, and a small ball the size of a ping-pong ball popped out, falling right into the palm of Xia Yan's hand, who had been prepared. Then Xia Yan put the small ball into a groove on the prototype control panel, and it fit perfectly. In the upper right corner of an old-fashioned monitor connected to the prototype, a lightning symbol appeared on a battery icon, indicating that the prototype was charging. After Xia Yan checked and found no problems, he continued to do the same, taking out the small balls from the other jewel discs and putting them into other grooves on the control panel. These small balls are actually similar in principle to the sealing balls that Xia Yan used to seal the infant clone, and they are all containers that can be used to store chakra. If you really want to give them a name, perhaps it would be more appropriate to name them chakra capacitors that appeared in Naruto. Because the main purpose of this type of small ball is to serve as a battery to provide power for the various machines invented by Xia Yan. The chakra intelligent brain in the body, the prototype at home, the 3 baby clones, the research and development and testing of various machines, along with Xia Yan's exploration of the rune system, he also developed a lot of things that require chakra to operate. This made Xia Yan's already scarce chakra even more stretched. In order to avoid being squeezed dry like Kakashi one day, Xia Yan naturally prepared for a rainy day and prepared a way to deal with it. That is the chakra capacitor in front of him. This is also like Xia Yan, who can choose many simpler and faster ways to make money with the knowledge of his previous life, chose to make the game keening in a thankless way. Because his biggest goal is not to make money, but to make chakra. All the players who wear the jewel disc to fight, the chakra they consume is actually not used completely in the projection of the game, but 30% is stored in the chakra capacitor in the jewel disc as a commission. Since the players only use the projection technique of the jewel disc, they cannot accurately judge the whereabouts of the chakra, so they don't realize that they have been fleeced unknowingly. The chakra capacitors that Xia Yan just took out from the jewel disc contain the chakra of the students who played the Gaijin game today. So whenever Xia Yan heard students thank him for letting them play Gaijin for free, he felt a little embarrassed. After all, you may make a small profit, but I will definitely not lose. The only regret is that Xia Yan has not yet solved the problem of chakra transmission from one person to another, and cannot convert other people's chakra into his own chakra. Otherwise, he would not be so easily drained by Kushina, but would be able to output so crazy that Kushina begged for mercy. This is naturally about playing cards. As for the chakra conversion problem, Xia Yan is not without ideas. In the original work, there are actually many techniques that can convert other people's chakra into their own chakra. Such as the chakra absorption technique of the red copper armor, Jirobo's Dorakudo, and the ability of the hungry ghost way. There are also creatures like Same Hata and White Zetsu who can naturally convert chakra. At worst, the Nine Tails also taught Naruto how to pass chakra to others in the Fourth War. There are many methods, but unfortunately they have not appeared yet or are too difficult to obtain, which is not what Xia Yan could covet in the past. However, Xia Yan's strength is improved a lot now, and it is time to start this topic. As for which direction to start, call the soldiers and generals to whom, since Xia Yan has not solved the problem of chakra conversion, these chakra capacitors can only be used for prototypes and some machines. They cannot be used on Xia Yan himself and his infant clone. But for him, it is already a great help. After all, whether Xia Yan's research on rune characteristics or the development of rune ninjutsu, it depends to a large extent on various simulation analyses on the prototype, and chakra is burned every minute and every second. Compared with the previous situation where the prototype runs for a while, Xia Yan has to rest for a while. Now with the chakra supplement provided by students, the prototype can be continuously supplied and operate 24 hours a day. Therefore, Xia Yan's research progress is also advancing significantly, and there are new discoveries every day. If he had not been worried about not having the strength to keep the bikini and related technologies, Xia Yan should have done so long ago. Having tasted the sweetness, Xia Yan naturally wanted more. After all, students in the ninja school don't have much chakra, and there are many restrictions on playing the jin, so the potential for providing chakra has reached its limit. That's why Xia Yan is so eager to prepare for the opening of the tavern. Instead of letting those strong ninjas be squeezed dry by the young ladies in the custom street every day, it's better to let Xia Yan squeeze them dry. And Xia Yan knows more tricks, gaijin cards and the like are just foreplay. Xia Yan also plans to launch more rune creations. Starting from Konoha, then to the Land of Fire, and finally spread to the entire ninja world. Let chakra no longer be just a tool for killing, but as a technology that truly takes root in this world. When his rune creations are integrated into all aspects of the ninja world, and everyone can't do without these things, then the chakra that is continuously provided to Xia Yan every moment will definitely be able to advance Xia Yan's research on runes to the realm of the Six-Path Sage. No, even if it is the so-called original rune, it is only the Six-Path Sage's understanding of the essence of chakra. It is just the understanding of chakra at the Six-Path level. It is not primitive enough. It is not the truth rooted in the bottom of chakra. When Xia Yan gets enough original runes, he will initiate reverse engineering of the source of chakra, and perhaps there will be a chance to explore the realm of the legendary god of chakra, train assistants from the ninja school who can help him implement the plan. Promote rune creations in the ninja world to harvest everyone's chakra. Finally, gather the chakras of all the people in the ninja world into one, explore the ultimate mystery of chakra, even become the god of chakra. And this is the full picture of Xia Yan's plan. Therefore, he also named this plan, Crowdfunding God of Chakra Plan. Chapter 41. Fierce Battle in the Woods. A few days later, in the early morning, in the grove behind the school, the sky gradually became brighter and softer, and the rose-red morning glow covered the entire forest like a transparent veil. Two figures that were more flexible than monkeys jumped back and forth between the trees, occasionally colliding with each other, making a dull sound of fists and feet, and startling large numbers of roosting birds. It can be vaguely seen that the two figures are a man and a woman. The man has silver curly hair, and the woman has long bright red hair. What is slightly surprising is that although the two seem to be evenly matched, the man's breathing is already a little heavy, while the woman's breath is still long, and she seems to be at ease. Xia Yan, I'm going to speed up. At this time, the red-haired woman suddenly reminded Kushina, wait. Xia Yan didn't finish his words, and saw Kushina suddenly jump up and down, leaving two shallow pits on the thick branches with her feet, and her body turned into a residual shadow, like a cannonball shooting towards him. The usually delicate pink fist turned into a terrible weapon, and it hit hard. Xia Yan had no choice but to cross his hands to block the punch, and then took advantage of the momentum to fly backwards. He adjusted his body shape in the air, condensed his chakra at the bottom of his feet, and landed steadily on a huge tree trunk, with his feet attached to it, and his body parallel to the ground. Seeing that Kushina was about to launch another attack, Xia Yan quickly made a pause gesture and said quickly, Kushina, wait, don't forget our purpose today. The warm-up exercises are almost done, and we should get to the point, otherwise we will be late for work later. Ah? But I haven't stretched my body yet. Kushina's movements froze after hearing Xia Yan's words. Although she didn't continue to attack, her face had a look of "you done now?" which made Xia Yan speechless. I'm afraid I'll be exhausted by the time you stretch. Sure enough, there are only cows that die of exhaustion in this world, but no land that is damaged by plowing. Never compete with the people of the Uzumaki clan in endurance. Xia Yan was complaining crazily in his heart, but on the surface he was righteous. A real fighting opponent will not give you a chance to warm up. Ninjas must be ready to fight at any time under any circumstances. Okay, you have a point. Kushina couldn't refute, so she had to obey. Xia Yan was relieved when he saw this. A few days ago, he promised Kushina that he would spar with her from time to time in the future to let her know her actual level. It was full of the condescending gaze of a special Chunin against a Chunin. I didn't expect that today, before the first sparring officially started, he almost overturned in the warm-up session. Xia Yan then realized that he seemed to be a little inferior to Kushina in a pure physical confrontation. If you are defeated by your opponent during the warm-up, how will the victory be determined? Waiting on the line, very anxious. Although Xia Yan has many excuses, to explain this situation. For example, Xia Yan's combat system is based on room ninjutsu, and physical skills don't occupy much weight, so he didn't spend much time on it before. It was only recently that he began to make up for this shortcoming of his. Therefore, it is reasonable and logical that he cannot beat Kushina, who has the guidance of a famous teacher, in physical skills. Just like a wizard who does not throw fireballs and fights a warrior in close combat, of course he will not have an advantage. Of course, if you were an old white-bearded wizard who only knows lighting magic, then just ignore what Xia Yan said. Not to mention that in the beginning, Xia Yan and Kushina were evenly matched and had a good relationship. It's just that Kushina's Uzumaki clan's cheating physique gave her strong endurance and stamina, and she gradually gained the upper hand later. In any case, Xia Yan was still a little embarrassed that he could not match the endurance of girls in hand-to-hand combat. But he didn't think much about it, because Kushina spoke again. Xia Yan, shall we start the formal sparring now? Xia Yan, who was still breathing slightly, looked around and pointed to an open space surrounded by trees in the distance and said, "We've already had a warm-up in the grove, let's go over there and have a ground battle." Xia Yan said that he definitely didn't make this decision just to rest a little longer when walking over. Okay. Kushina covered her mouth and smiled secretly after saying that, not exposing Xia Yan's little thoughts. In fact, Kushina had already noticed that Xia Yan's physical skills were slightly inferior to hers, and his endurance was far inferior. Discovering that the genius Yushin Xia Yan, who was praised by even Grandma Mito, also had shortcomings, Kushina didn't know why she felt an inexplicable sense of relief. With Xia Yan's deliberate delay and Kushina's deliberate accommodation, the two of them flew slowly between the trees, and after a while they arrived at the open space that Xia Yan mentioned. After landing, Xia Yan, who had adjusted his breathing, said, "The rules are basically based on actual combat practice, but since we have to go to class later, we don't need to use ninja tools, is that okay?" Kushina nodded to show that she had no objection. So the two of them distanced themselves in the open space and faced each other from a distance. "I'm available anytime, Kushina, just start when you're ready." After Xia Yan said this, he stood there waiting without any movement. Seeing this, Kushina didn't dare to be careless. Now it's not like the warm-up just now. Xia Yan can use various means in addition to physical skills. What kind of fighting method will Xia Yan use? Obviously, the sealing technique and the projection technique that Xia Yan played to perfection are indispensable, but the range is still too large. Moreover, Kushina just noticed that there seemed to be some problems in the connection between Xia Yan's physical skills during the warm-up, which was obviously caused by not using ninjutsu. This means that Xia Yan is likely to have ninjutsu moves that can be used in conjunction with physical skills. Kushina secretly memorized it in her heart and reminded herself not to be careless later. After thinking it over, Kushina shouted, "Then I'm going to attack." Then she rushed towards Xia Yan, and quickly formed seals with both hands. Shadow clone technique. As soon as the work fell, several white smokes exploded beside Kushina, and 4 shadow clones that looked exactly like her appeared. Then the shadow clones quickly dispersed, as if they were ready to surround Xia Yan from 4 directions. Kushina's real body followed behind a shadow clone, ready to move when the opportunity arose. Is it really this ancestral ninjutsu? Indeed, for the Uzumaki clan with a large amount of chakra, the shadow clone technique is a very cost-effective move. However, Xia Yan still stood still, and did not even take a fighting stance, still watching the actions of Kushina's several shadow clones with interest. Soon the 4 clones surrounded Xia Yan, waving their fists at the same time and charging at him. Seeing that the 4 clones attacked in exactly the same pace, it was obvious that they had been specially practiced. Xia Yan guessed that this was a physical combat method developed by the Uzumaki clan for the shadow clone technique. Sure enough, the 4 shadow clones cooperated very well, leaving no room for dodging in all directions. Seeing that they were about to hit Xia Yan. At this moment, Xia Yan raised his hand and snapped his fingers. At the same time, he gently uttered, "It's dark, please close your eyes." The next moment, night fell. As the main body, Kushina, who was ready to take advantage of Xia Yan's dealing with the 4 clones to attack, suddenly had black eyes. This was not the black eyes that could not see clearly when fainting. It was a real black eyes. Kushina did not feel any discomfort, but found that the surroundings suddenly became pitch black, and she could not see her hand in front of her. Bang! One clone disappeared, and the memory instantly returned to Kushina's main body. But Kushina did not get any useful information from it, because this clone also had black eyes and was broken without knowing what happened. Bang! Bang bang! Before Kushina could give instructions to her clones, they disappeared one after another. Like the first clone, they did not bring any information to Kushina. At this time, Kushina could not help but recall the illusion developed by the second Hokage, Senjutsu, that Mito's grandmother had mentioned, the darkness technique. The technique can also achieve a similar effect. However, Kushina knew that there was no confusion in the chakra in her body. So this was obviously a trick played by Xia Yan's projection technique. It cannot be cracked by the method of removing illusions. Kushina's brain was spinning rapidly, thinking about how to crack this technique. Unfortunately, there was no time. Because Xia Yan's voice, as cold as an iceberg, had already sounded behind her, The Secret of Konohagaku's Secret Body Technique, Chapter 42. Unknown Technique. Kushina groaned in pain in the dark space. Before she finished listening to Xia Yan's spell chanting, she felt as if she was kicked in the right abdomen, and her body flew to the left like a kite with a broken string. The only one who stayed in place was Xia Yan, who was wiping the cold sweat from his forehead. It was a close call. I almost used that move according to the habit in training. The power of habit is really terrible. Xia Yan muttered with lingering fear, his little heart pounding. Kakashi misunderstood me. He couldn't imagine what consequences would be caused by the move. I'm afraid he would have to pack up and run away overnight, turn to Uchimebara, and aspire to create a world where Kushina had never been hit by the move. Kushina, who was kicked away by Xia Yan, was shocked to find that her eyes were bright before she flew a few meters, and she found that she could see things again. She reacted quickly, turned her head quickly to look around, adjusted her posture and landed, and her feet dragged 2 gullies on the ground. Then she took a defensive stance and looked in the direction she was flying from. She saw Xia Yan, who had kicked her away, was still standing there, and seemed to have no intention of continuing to attack. Around him, a thick black fog was slowly dissipating in the air. Kushina quickly realized that the culprit that made her and her clone unable to see anything was the black fog. Obviously, it was the same as her analysis, which was created by Xia Yan's projection technique. After thinking this through, Kushina was a little speechless. She thought that Xia Yan's fighting method should be like in class, projecting all kinds of fancy large-scale illusions, making it difficult for people to distinguish between reality and illusion. So she has been on guard against this and remained vigilant to everything around her. Even if he suddenly projected the huge 1,000-armed Buddha statue, Kushina would not be scared. I didn't expect that when Xia Yan really fights, his use of projection will be so simple and unpretentious. Directly create a black fog to hit the opponent's face, so that the opponent can't see anything. It's simple and crude. That's right. This projection technique is to use various images to confuse the opponent and create an opportunity to attack. In many cases, it is more straightforward to deprive the opponent of his vision rather than spending a lot of chakra to create a complex large-scale illusion. It seems that this is one of the practical uses of Xia Yan's projection technique. Kushina felt that she had gained a lot. At this time, Xia Yan, who had finally adjusted his mood, spoke. How is my black screen and death technique? So this move is called black screen and death technique. Kushina thought for a while. Does it mean to use the black fog to block the line of sight and create an opportunity to kill the opponent? This name is indeed very appropriate. Full marks for reading comprehension. Xia Yan couldn't help but twitch his mouth and said, yes, you're absolutely right. But in fact, even Xia Yan, the namer, did not expect that there would be such an explanation. At this time, Kushina remembered something and asked curiously, by the way, I just heard that you seem to be preparing to use a technique that sounded very powerful, such as the secret technique of Konohagaku. Why don't you continue to use it? Xia Yan's face froze. He had never heard of such a request in his life. Moreover, he took the initiative to talk about his black screen crash technique just now, just to make Kushina forget about it, but he didn't expect her to bring up that topic again. However, since he was asked, Xia Yan had to pretend to be deep and look at the sky at a 45-degree angle. Because it is actually a terrible forbidden technique, every time it is used, someone will die because of it. Yes, Xia Yan was referring to his social death. but Kushina didn't know what Xia Yan meant, so she naturally thought that the person he said would die was herself, and she couldn't help but feel a little scared. It turned out that she had just walked through the gates of hell. At the same time, Kushina looked at Xia Yan with sympathy. Xia Yan almost used that forbidden technique on her. Of course it was not intentional. This means that Xia Yan often used this technique in the past, which formed a deep-rooted physical memory, so that he would accidentally use it during sparring. What kind of life did Xia Yan live in the past? Kushina couldn't help but think of what the third generation said, that the people outside the village really lived in dire straits. Looking at Xia Yan's deep expression, Kushina didn't dare to imagine how many heart-wrenching memories were behind that forbidden technique. So she didn't dare to continue asking, but she still silently remembered the forbidden technique that Xia Yan didn't use. She thought to herself, if I have a chance in the future, I must let Xia Yan open my eyes. Then Kushina waved her fist and said to Xia Yan, I was careless just now and didn't dodge, so I was ambushed by you, come again. So the battle started again. Look at my Uzumaki Kushina ninja scroll. Black screen and death technique. Motada. It's dark, please close your eyes. Ah. The night gave me black eyes, but I used them to look for light. Until the end of the first sparring, Kushina still couldn't crack Xia Yan's trick. Instead, she was a little broken by the continuous black screen and death. I experienced a little bit of how Xia Yan felt when an ordinary person encountered repeated black screen and death in his previous life. Also, after the sparring, Kushina found that she still didn't know the name of the forbidden technique. So one day later, she plucked up the courage and asked Xia Yan. Unfortunately, Xia Yan still had a secretive look, as if he had a very deep and unspeakable secret. Although Kushina felt a little regretful, she didn't delve into it. Therefore, even after many years, Kushina still didn't know the name of the technique she heard that day. After the first sparring with Kushina, Xia Yan's life returned to peace. Days passed by one. After looking at more than a dozen places with Kushina, Xia Yan finally decided on the site of an old restaurant in Alley 3 of Ichiraku Avenue. This place has been closed for a while because of the poor management of the owner. Although there are several places that look more suitable than this place, Xia Yan still chose this place. In addition to the fact that this place is not far from his home. He also found that the opposite side of this store is exactly the location of the future Ichiraku ramen store. You can tell at a glance that the feng shui here is very good. Otherwise, it would be impossible to live peacefully in Konoha, which is full of disasters in the future. After determining the location of the tavern, Xia Yan, with the help of Mr. Ikaku, found a construction team to renovate the restaurant according to his requirements. All Xia Yan can do next is to wait. Chapter 43 The concept of holographic movies. In the ninja school, Xia Yan's teaching of sealing techniques was also carried out in an orderly manner. And because Xia Yan's teaching method became more and more sophisticated, and the students were fully focused, each class could quickly complete the teaching tasks of the day. In the remaining time, Xia Yan also used projection to show various stories to everyone according to the previous agreement. Because in terms of homework grades, the girls' group crushed the boys' group with a big advantage, so Xia Yan showed the story of the Mako and the Dog Demon most of the time. However, it was different from the Warring States human-animal love movie that everyone expected. Xia Yan showed a few episodes of the Mako and the Dog Demon's daily life, and after making everyone feel so sweet, he suddenly raised his hand and killed the Mako with the knife, and the Dog Demon was sealed by the Mako on the sacred tree. Although this was a clip that Xia Yan showed to everyone in the first class, after the previous sweet and sticky daily life as a foreshadowing, this plot seemed even more unacceptable. Therefore, it almost caused a riot among the little girls. Even Waiko-sama and Kushina didn't look at him well. However, just when the little girls were crowdfunding to send razor blades to teacher Xia Yan. In the next class, Xia Yan changed his style and pushed the story time to the present hundreds of years later, telling the story of the reincarnation of the witch. And the stage of the story is actually their Konoha. Looking at the fictional character named Miyotai Sadako in the projection, walking in the familiar streets and alleys of Konoha, eating what everyone can eat every day, and having the same troubles as the girls, everyone has a very novel sense of presence. It feels like there is really such a person living in Konoha like them. Therefore, the girls have temporarily suspended the plan to send razor blades to the teacher, wanting to see the subsequent development of the story. Some girls with bigger imaginations have already speculated that it must be that the Dog Demon has lived to the modern era, and even become a big demon, ready to start a love story with Sadako of the overbearing Demon King falls in love with me. and Xia Yan's next story seems to be developing in this direction. Obviously, she looks like a big beauty, but everyone in the story thinks that Miyotai Sadako looks ordinary. Even herself. But even such an ordinary girl has several handsome guys of different styles around her. Everyone is looking forward to the sure field caused by the appearance of the Queen Dog Demon King. As a result, no one expected that teacher Xia Yan was just teasing fans. This male Tai Sadako actually fell into an ancient world and died after a few episodes, and traveled back to the Warring States period hundreds of years ago. Not only that, she also teamed up with the dog demon. While dating and trying to steal her boyfriend, she embarked on a journey to find the 7 Dragon Balls in order to return to the modern era. This unprecedented story development shocked the little girls, and they quickly returned the blades and bought a pen for teacher Xia Yan with extra money. It means, "Teacher, you continue to make it up." And Waiko-sama was also deeply attracted by this story. He appeared in the sealing technique class every day without fail, and his attendance rate was even higher than that of Obito. Even when eating noodles at Schwank's-ramen, Xia Yan heard unfamiliar female ninjas discussing this story. And the question discussed was quite profound. What wish would the dog demon fulfill with the Dragon Balls? Would he send Sadako back to the modern world as promised, or become a human and live with Sadako, or resurrect the dead shrine maiden, triggering a strange love triangle in which he and his wife compete for her husband? Xia Yan was too embarrassed to tell them that he could not continue making up the story and was going to end it with a big meteorite, but everyone's enthusiasm for this story still inspired him. Since even this kind of story he randomly pieced together and made up could be so popular, what kind of sensation would it cause if those classic stories from his previous life were moved to the ninja world in the form of holographic movies? I'm a movie tycoon in Konoha, is there any hope? But now even the tavern has not opened yet. Xia Yan had to postpone this idea for the time being and wait for the right time. October 24, afternoon. It was almost time for school to end, and Xia Yan was walking in the corridor on the first floor of the teaching building. He had just finished his daily task of scanning books in the library and was about to go back to the office to pack up and go home after work. Recently, he has improved the camera technique and removed the blinking function that he designed on a whim. Therefore, the library outsides were not so strange when she looked at him. Xia Yan walked to the door of his office and heard someone talking inside. But he was not surprised and continued to push the door. As soon as he entered the door, Xia Yan saw a corner of the office where Kushina was tutoring Obito. This situation has been going on for a while, so Xia Yan was not surprised. Before, he learned that Kushina was going to tutor Obito, and he felt a little ashamed as a genuine sealing technique teacher. So when he heard that they were looking for a tutoring place, he offered his office. Anyway, he usually stays in the library when he has nothing to do. Although Xia Yan has seen the harmonious and happy scenes of the two teachers and students many times, he is still a little uncomfortable, and he always can't help showing a strange expression on his face. After all, in the original work, Obito, the stinky boy, later concocted the Nine-Tails Rebellion and unsealed the Nine-Tails from Kushina who had just given birth, which directly led to her death. This made the harmonious relationship between the two people look like a strong irony in Xia Yan's eyes. It can only be said that Obito, who has not yet turned evil, has a personality similar to Naruto, carefree, and has a great compatibility with Kushina, so they get along very well. At this time, the two also heard the sound of Xia Yan opening the door, and they all looked over. "Ah, Xia Yan, you're back." Kushina waved and greeted. "Good afternoon, Teacher Xia Yan." Obito also greeted Xia Yan, with a somewhat restrained expression. I don't know if it is because of the natural fear of teachers by poor students. Obito always feels that teacher Xia Yan seems to dislike him a little, especially recently it has become more and more obvious. Thinking of the rumor that the number of students in the sealing technique class has been reduced, Obito couldn't help but feel nervous. Danger. "Hey, you guys continue with your tutoring, don't worry about me." Xia Yan greeted and walked to his seat. "We actually just finished tutoring and are chatting now." Kushina replied, and then she seemed to suddenly think of something and put her hands together. "By the way, Obito, Xia Yan is so smart, why don't we ask him if there is any solution?" Kushina said in the tone of Nobita asking Doraemon for help. Obito's eyes lit up when he heard it, and he turned his head to look at Xia Yan with expectation. Xia Yan, who was walking to his seat, became a little interested after hearing this. So he stopped and said, "What is it? Is there any solution?" "Actually, it's like this." Kushina glanced at Obito, and seeing that he had no intention of speaking, she said, "Hatake Kakashi, Xia Yan, you know him, right?" He is the son of White Fang. I heard he is a genius. What Obito and I were discussing just now is how to defeat that Kakashi. And it would be best if it was before the end of this semester, because Kakashi seems to graduate at the end of this semester. Obito also nodded repeatedly, indicating that what Kushina said was what he wanted to say. Defeat Kakashi. Xia Yan raised his eyebrows slightly. Did Obito and Kakashi's love-hate relationship start in the first year of the ninja school? What a bad fate. Then he heard Kushina continue to say, yes. My suggestion is to find an opportunity to sneak attack Kakashi. This is what I did when I couldn't beat those senior students before. Anyway, it's okay as long as I can win. After Kushina reminisced about her glorious years in the ninja school, she looked at Xia Yan curiously. Xia Yan, what do you think? Chapter 44 Comparison of Transcripts. Kushina, there must be something fishy about this. Xia Yan complained in his heart. Seeing that the two are still waiting for his opinion, Xia Yan casually said, why do you have such an idea, Obito? Of course it's because Obito got stuck halfway through his speech and found that he actually didn't have a very good reason at all. Just want to teach that arrogant Kakashi a lesson. It doesn't seem appropriate. Want to wake up Kakashi who has always had a stern face and is obsessed with ghosts recently. It seems too hypocritical. That's right. Obito finally found a reason with great difficulty. Kakashi said bad things about the sealing technique class a few days ago. Obito rubbed his hands and said it in a sneaky and thief-like manner. Xia Yan couldn't help but think of the scenes in various dramas where traitors reported to Tajin. It feels like something is wrong, but Obito's next words quickly attracted Xia Yan's attention. Teacher Xia Yan, Kakashi actually said that our sealing technique class can't last long. Look how bad he is, he actually cursed our class. There is already a curse. Before Obito finished speaking, Kushina suddenly hissed and turned her head to look at Xia Yan. Wasn't what Kakashi said the same thing as Xia Yan said to her before? Xia Yan also raised his eyebrows slightly. I didn't expect Kakashi to notice this. He is indeed a man who can think with the mindset of a Hokage at the age of 5. Why does it feel like this is not said by Kakashi? Xia Yan couldn't help but tap his forehead with his fingers. After traveling through time for a long time, some memories are blurred. But it should be correct, after all, who else can bear this sentence? You know, Kakashi really became the 6th Hokage later. It is said that his blood-red left eye can see through the 3 realms in the future. Teacher, don't you think Kakashi is too much? Obito didn't notice the strangeness of the two teachers, and was still fanning the flames. Xia Yan also came back to his senses. After hearing what Obito said, he replied indifferently. So Kakashi has such an idea. It is indeed a bit regrettable. Obito saw that Xia Yan teacher didn't care, and his little face fell all of a sudden. However, he heard Xia Yan teacher say, however, how to let Obito defeat the genius Kakashi in a short time is indeed an interesting question. Then I will give you some ideas. Obito was immediately happy when he heard this. He knew that Xia Yan teacher was more narrow-minded than he looked. But he didn't dare to show it, but secretly turned his head back and showed a sinister look of planning. Xia Yan naturally saw all the little actions of Obito's classmate, but he didn't show it. And he didn't change his attitude because Kakashi Shiangxia said the truth, as Obito thought. Xia Yan just glanced at the clock on the toolbar and found that there was still some time before school was over, so he decided to chat with them to kill time. In fact, in his opinion, it is very simple for Obito to defeat Kakashi. He doesn't need to do anything at all. As long as the time comes, his cheap grandfather will naturally arrange everything for him. White Zetsu prosthetics, first generation cells, Mainsheim Sharingan, Uchiha clan forbidden techniques, 6-path technique, yin-yang release technique, flame fan, plus a wall of resurrection coins. The treatment of a proper online novel protagonist makes Xia Yan a little envious and jealous. By then, let alone defeating Kakashi, he can even make Kakashi look like 18 different things. However, if the time is limited to this semester, this problem is a bit interesting. Xia Yan walked towards the two of them, pulled out a chair and sat down, and said slowly, "But before I officially give you advice, I have to understand your specific situation first, so that I can draw a useful conclusion. It just so happens that when the sealing technique class was expanding, I asked by Waito-sama for the transcripts of all students in the last semester. We should be able to get some information from them." Obito, who thought his evil plan had succeeded, suddenly froze his smile when he heard about the transcript. Obviously, his grades last semester were not very good. but I returned the transcript you mentioned, Xia Yan, a few days ago. Kushina stood up and suggested, how about I go get it now? No need to bother. Xia Yan waved his hand. Obito was also slightly relieved. Unexpectedly, Xia Yan continued, I still remember those materials, just let me recall them a little bit, Obito. ? Oh, is that so? Kushina sat back down. After a few seconds, she shuddered and jumped up. Wait, Xia Yan, are you saying that you memorized all the students' grades? How is that possible? Kushina's face was full of disbelief. Obito also looked like, I think you were just trying to make things difficult for me, Obito. Xia Yan said modestly, I didn't memorize everything, but I have a special skill to remember things. After that, he secretly opened the system interface, opened the transcript file he had taken before, and began to search for Kakashi and Obito's grades. Xia Yan quickly searched and said casually, compared to you, one has the blood of the Uchiha clan and the other has the physique of the Uzumaki clan, my performance is actually nothing big. However, the two who had not yet realized the extraordinary power of their bloodline were very envious of Xia Yan's ability to remember everything he saw. After all, for these two poor students, if they had this ability, how much time they would save on memorizing. In the envious eyes of the two, Xia Yan quickly found Obito and Kakashi's grades and began to recite. Found it, Hatake Kakashi. S grade in ninjutsu, S grade in taijutsu, S grade in ninja gear, S grade in tactics. These are the only 4 courses related to combat in the first year. Then there are the teacher's comments. He has the ability to become a genin. It is recommended that he be allowed to graduate early. A genius ninja once in 1,000 years. This boy has the potential to be a Hokage. As Xia Yan narrated, Obito's eyes widened and almost popped out. Although he knew that Kakashi was very powerful, he didn't expect him to be so powerful. In addition to his good grades, the teachers also spoke so highly of him. Kushina also raised her eyebrows when she heard this, feeling a sense of jadu, thinking of a guy who also had good grades. After they digested it, Xia Yan continued. As for you, Obito, your ninjutsu score is C, your taijutsu score is B, your ninja tools score is B, and your tactics score is D. The teacher's comments are there is still a lot of room for improvement and you were a good child who respects the elderly and loves the young. Obito was not very satisfied with his own results to begin with, and now comparing them with Kakashi's, he felt even more ashamed. Kushina was also a little speechless after hearing this, and couldn't help turning her head to look at Obito. Who gave you the courage to challenge Kakashi? Obito, have you ever thought about changing to a simpler target? I heard that there is a kid named My Guy who is actually not bad. After Xia Yan finished talking about the results of the two, he also touched his chin and pondered for a moment. The situation is a bit serious, Xia Yan said slowly. Kushina and Obito couldn't help but look at Xia Yan when they heard this. Then Xia Yan continued. Obito, it's hard for you, a 2B, to defeat Kakashi. Thank you ID for the reward. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novel, as there you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 45 Obito. Danger. Stop scolding, stop scolding. After listening to Xia Yan's closing statement, Obito looked completely depressed, with his head hanging low. Seeing this, Kushina felt sympathetic. When she was in ninja school, there was also a blonde sissy in her class who was ranked first in not only cultural courses but also various practical courses, which made her depressed. The air in the entire ceiling office became a little heavy. After a while, the two heard Xia Yan slowly uttered, "But there is a way." It was just a short sentence, but it instantly dispelled the oppressive air around them, and both Kushina and Obito showed surprised expressions. Seeing the two so excited, Xia Yan spread his hands helplessly. After all, Obito, your goal is just to defeat Kakashi, not to become stronger than Kakashi. Teacher Xia Yan, is there any difference between the two? Obito asked in confusion. Xia Yan patiently explained. The outcome of a battle is not determined solely by the strength of the ninja. The time, place, and weather of the battle, the state of both sides during the battle, the degree of mastery of the opponent's intelligence, the compatibility of fighting styles, the tactical arrangements during the battle, etc. All of these will affect the outcome of a battle. Xia Yan listed various factors that affect the outcome of a battle like a menu, which made Obito look confused. Seeing this, Xia Yan added helplessly. These are all the knowledge taught in the tactics class, no wonder you only got a D in this subject. Obito scratched his head a little embarrassed when he heard this. Another point is, Xia Yan continued, although ninjas have a variety of attack methods, their bodies are relatively fragile. Even the Okage may be threatened by a kunai. After saying this, Xia Yan seemed to feel that Hashirama Senju, who once wanted to commit suicide with a kunai, gave him a thumbs up in the Pure Land. And Kakuzu, who threw a shuriken at Hashirama 800 miles away, seemed to be saying in the air that he actually threatened the life of the first generation at the time. Xia Yan smiled lightly and continued. The characteristics of ninjas, which are strong in attack but weak in defense, are destined to be defeated by opponents who are much weaker than themselves if they are not careful. Therefore, if you, Obito, collect information about Kakashi in advance, make plans, and make targeted exercises, and then create a battlefield that is favorable to yourself, so as to create a few opportunities to attack, and then seize them. Then even if Kakashi is praised as a genius once in 1,000 years, he is not invincible. After listening to Xia Yan's explanation, Obito was half happy and half worried. He was happy that his whimsical idea was actually feasible. He was worried that this plan sounded very complicated, and it was not something that Obito could handle in a short time. So he couldn't help but look at Xia Yan's teacher, wanting to say something but stopping himself. Xia Yan understood and said, Obito, you want to ask, can our handsome and elegant teacher Xia Yan give you some more guidance in this regard? Although he felt that the prefix was a bit redundant, Obito still nodded a little embarrassedly. After all, it was fine to just ask for advice, but Obito felt that it was a bit too much to ask the teacher to guide him on such a matter. But he didn't expect to hear teacher Xia Yan say the next moment, it's not impossible. It's okay to teach you step by step. Obito was surprised and happy to hear this. He didn't expect that teacher Xia Yan, who usually seemed to dislike him, would be so easy to talk to. Could it be that the previous feeling was just an illusion? Kushina was also moved when she heard this. Sure enough, although Xia Yan left after class, finished work after school, and pushed homework to herself, he was still a good teacher who cared about students. But before the two of them were happy for too long, Xia Yan changed the subject and said, But Obito, are you sure you really want to do this? Even if you can defeat the first-year Kakashi, it doesn't mean anything. On the contrary, doing various targeted training to defeat him may delay normal training, which is not worth the loss. Are you really mentally prepared? After Xia Yan finished speaking, he looked at Obito quietly, waiting for his answer. Kushina on the side wanted to say something but stopped, and finally did not speak, also waiting quietly. Obito was also a little nervous under this atmosphere. Hearing teacher Xia Yan's serious words, he was a little discouraged. It seems that there is no need to do this for that guy, right? Obito wanted to laugh it off and pretend that all this was just a casual remark. But Kakashi's bitter and vengeful face suddenly flashed in his mind. In the end, Obito gritted his teeth and said with determination, Teacher Xia Yan, I have made up my mind. Please teach me how to defeat Kakashi. Xia Yan nodded with satisfaction. I am very happy that you are so determined. Then it is time for me to put forward conditions. What, there are conditions? Obito was immediately shocked and his eyes widened. Of course, Xia Yan said speechlessly, it is obviously not my duty as a teacher of sealing techniques to teach you how to defeat Kakashi. How can you think that I will help you for no reason? Kushina held her forehead and was speechless. Sure enough, this was the Xia Yan she was familiar with. Obito couldn't refute it, so he had to ask weakly. Then what do you need me to do for you, teacher? First of all, some chores, such as cleaning this office, organizing materials and so on, Xia Yan said, and seeing Kushina hinting at him wildly with her eyes, he added, and help our teaching assistants correct some simple homework. Kushina smiled. Finally, the work that Xia Yan outsourced to herself was outsourced. Xia Yan rolled his eyes slightly and continued. Also, because my teaching content is a little different from the past, I originally planned to find a few talented students to learn the following content in advance, so that I can clarify the future teaching arrangements. Obito, you can also be counted as one talented student. Obito touched his head embarrassedly after hearing this, so you think so highly of me, teacher? No, I mean you can participate as a control group. Obito. ... He felt that the teacher was scolding him again, but he had no evidence. Cleaning, correcting homework, learning the following content in advance, Obito counted on his fingers and recalled the requirements put forward by teacher Xia Yan. He felt that it was not too outrageous and finally breathed a sigh of relief. Then he heard teacher Xia Yan say, Of course, the most important condition, and the reason why I agreed to your strange request, is that I need students to help me test some new teaching aids. New teaching aids? X2 both of them were a little curious. Xia Yan explained. Because our sealing techniques class has a good effect using the Genin cards as teaching aids, the principal gave me a task to see if I can make some new teaching aids for other subjects to improve learning effects. Actually, I have made a lot of similar things before to assist in training. But there are many differences in the physical fitness and chakra meridians between adults and children, so I need students to help me debug these teaching aids and prepare for their popularization in schools in the future. Although there will be no danger, it is obviously not a comfortable job. I was worried about where to find students to help. I didn't expect you, Obito, to come to me in person. You can use these teaching aids to become stronger while testing them, killing two birds with one stone. And since you are so determined, you should not mind a slightly radical place. No, it's a test. Xia Yan, wearing a white coat, stood up, looked down at Obito with the eyes of an experimental subject, and showed the standard smile of a mad scientist. Obito's small body was covered by Xia Yan's shadow, and he began to tremble and regret his decision. Sure enough, he felt that teacher Xia Yan didn't like him very much, and it was not an illusion. Excuse me, is it too late to give up now? Obito said with tears in his eyes. Chapter 46 My Taijutsu was taught by my sealing techniques teacher. It was early Saturday morning. Today was a holiday for the ninja school, but Uchiha Obito was running towards the school in a hurry. This is bad. I'm late for the first special training. I don't know if teacher Xia Yan will be angry. Thinking of the usually smiling teacher Xia Yan being angry, Obito felt a little scared and couldn't help shivering. A few days ago, he asked teacher Xia Yan for advice on how to defeat Kakashi on the whim. Unexpectedly, he ended up signing a bunch of unequal treaties. In return, he had the opportunity to receive special training from teacher Xia Yan regularly. And today was the day of the first special training. Soon, Obito ran to the vicinity of the ninja school. From a distance, he saw teacher Xia Yan standing at the school gate, with a stern face, looking seriously at the empty front. Sure enough, he was angry. Obito groaned in his heart, not daring to delay, and ran over at full speed. Yes, I'm sorry, Mr. Xia Yan, I just met an old lady who needed help. He quickly ran to Xia Yan, put his hands on his knees, and said breathlessly. Xia Yan, who noticed Obito's arrival, silently turned off the guide to the evaluation of beast girls on the interface. After hearing the reason why Obito was late, Xia Yan sighed helplessly. Actually, I wanted to ask before, Obito, do you have an old man radar or something? Why do you always meet old people who need help? So much so that Xia Yan began to wonder if this special ability was at work when Obito met Uchiha. Hearing Xia Yan's complaints, Obito didn't dare to refute, and could only scratch his head and smile bigly. What can he do? He is also desperate. Don't you want to help old people in need? It's a pity that this child can't travel back to Xia Yan's previous life, otherwise this problem will be cured in less than 3 days. In order to change the subject, Obito stood up and looked around, and asked curiously. Where is teacher Kushina? Why isn't she here today? It seems that she has something to do today, so she can't come. Xia Yan replied. Just like Obito was preparing for the special training to defeat Kakashi, Kushina was also quietly conducting a special training called Defeat the Unscrupulous Boss under the guidance of Mito-sama. But this was not something Xia Yan could know. Is that so? Obito felt a little regretful. After all, didn't this mean that he and teacher Xia Yan would be alone together? He felt a little nervous. But this feeling was soon diluted by the anticipation of the special training. Obito immediately looked at Xia Yan with excitement. Teacher, what special training are we going to have today? I want to learn the 6 paths Sage's clam school Kibone. Before the special training started, Obito had already imagined the scene of his own supernatural power, beating Kakashi, and making Lin's eyes full of hearts. However, his beautiful dream was soon shattered by the 2 words Xia Yan gently uttered. Physical skills. The huge psychological gap made Obito's face suddenly become long. Teacher, how can it be physical skills? Did the teacher of the sealing technique teach students physical skills wrong? Because in the face of absolute strength, all conspiracies and tricks are futile. Xia Yan explained, even if I design various tactics for you, if you don't even have the basic ability to execute, it's useless. So what we have to do in the first stage is to try to narrow that gap between you and Kakashi. And practicing physical skills is the fastest way for you to improve your strength now. I see. Although Obito was a little disappointed, he felt that what teacher Xia Yan said made sense after listening. Moreover, the teacher also said that this was only the first stage, and Obito still had expectations for the subsequent special training. Obito, who had made some preparations in his heart, finally accepted the fact that he had to practice physical skills. However, when he thought that someone would ask him where this physical skill came from in the future, Obito looked embarrassed. How could he answer? My taijutsu was taught by my teacher in sealing techniques. Putting the embarrassing scene out of his mind for the time being, Obito pulled himself together to defeat Kakashi and said to teacher Xia Yan, "Teacher, let's start training quickly." "Wait a minute, we still have to wait for an assistant," Xia Yan said. Obito's eyes widened when he heard it. "What? There is an assistant? And he was late even longer than me?" After saying that, Obito actually had a little snicker on his face. Xia Yan was very familiar with this expression, which was the sense of relief that came from finding someone worse than himself. So Xia Yan glanced at Obito speechlessly. He is not late, but he just thinks that waiting here will waste his youth, so he went to the playground to run laps. Judging from the time, he should be back soon. Obito's face froze, not only because the man was not late, but more importantly, the word youth gave him an ominous premonition. As expected, as soon as you mention the devil will appear. Our assistant just came back. Xia Yan pointed his finger at a figure running towards the playground. Obito was in no mood to ask who Kado was, because he found that his ominous premonition had come true. Although the figure was still far away and he couldn't see it clearly, Obito already knew the other party's identity. Because the figure was a ball of green, a blue cub was seen rushing towards the two of them like a wild dog that had broken free from its reins. "Teacher, isn't that's right, your assistant in special training at this stage is your classmate, Might Guy." As soon as Xia Yan finished speaking, Might Guy, who had a watermelon head, thick eyebrows, a big nose, and was wearing a green tights, rushed in front of the two of them. Kai braked suddenly and stopped just in front of Obito. He took Obito's hands, and before he opened his mouth, 2 lines of hot tears had already flowed down. "Obito, I've heard what teacher Xia Yan said. I didn't expect you to do special training to keep Kakashi. I'm so touched. Friendship, hard work, victory. This is the youth I long for." Obito, who was disgusted by Kai's tears and snot, shook Kai's hand away and quickly clarified the rumors about himself and Kakashi. "Wait, what do you mean I did special training to keep Kakashi? Don't talk nonsense." Xia Yan also touched his nose at this time. In order to convince my guy to join, he made a little artistic processing of the whole thing. Akai wiped his tears and snot, and said with a touching face, "Obito, you don't have to hide it anymore. Teacher Xia Yan has analyzed your plan for me. A genius like Kakashi must be very proud. If he is really defeated by his classmates in the ninja school, he will never graduate early before winning back. Obito, you want to defeat Kakashi for this purpose. And you always go against him, just to make Kakashi more unwilling to lose, and increase the success rate of this plan. It's really well intentioned." Akai couldn't help but give a thumbs up. Enemy, but also close friend, this kind of entangled fate is the essence of youth. After saying that, he grinned, revealing 2 rows of white and shining teeth. Obito was stunned. He looked at Akai and Xia Yan, both of whom had a smile on their faces that said you don't need to explain, we all understand, and knew that no matter how he refuted, it would be useless. At this time, Kai continued, "Obito, although I am Kakashi's #1 enemy. But since this method is yours, I have no right to compete with you. So I will give you Kakashi's first time. But his second time, third time, and countless times after that, are all mine. Not only that, I have also promised teacher Xia Yan that I will fully assist you in your physical training. Come on, just follow me to sweat and sing praises to youth. Go, let's run towards the big sunset together." Kai put one hand on Obito's shoulders and pointed at the sunset in the distance with the other hand. Obito, who was hugged by him, was numb at this time. "Hey. It's still morning, Kai, why is the world in your eyes different from ours?" Chapter 47. The most powerful teaching aid for physical training. Just as Kai and Obito are singing praises of youth, Xia Yan, who was standing by, was also embarrassed by Kai's strong and stinking youthful atmosphere, which gave him goosebumps all over his body. He silently took 2 steps back and opened the Summoning Beast Girl evaluation guide on the interface again to calm down, so as not to be infected by Kai's youth virus. This also made him think of one thing. Could it be that this is the reason why Kakashi has been reading Intimate Paradise in the future? Fighting poison with poison. Could it be that I have always wronged him? With the scientific spirit of truth seeking to verify this theory, Xia Yan turned to the next page. After a long time, Kai poured all his burning youthful essence into Obito, and finally calmed down temporarily. Xia Yan just finished reading the volume of Slug Girl. So Obito's special training is finally about to officially begin. But for some reason, Obito looked tired. Although the special training has not started yet, he already feels very tired in his heart. Xia Yan let Kakashi's nemesis know. 1 and no. 2 to a small training ground behind that teaching building. He stood at the sidelines and said to the two, "First of all, in order to understand your current specific strength, Obito, I need you to fight with each other in physical skills first." Yes. The V10th 2 special training officially began, and Obito and Kai finally got serious. They walked to the training ground and separated on both sides as they usually did in class and training, and each made an opposing seal. Obito looked at my guy who was eager to try on the opposite side, and made calculations in his mind. In the usual physical training class, my record with Kai is basically 50-50, so we can't take it lightly. I must perform well and let teacher Xia Yan see my true strength. Obito, who encouraged himself, began to become excited. However, just when the two were about to start fighting, Xia Yan suddenly interrupted them. "By the way, Guy, are you wearing any weights? Can you take them off first?" "Hey, how did you know that, teacher?" Kai raised his thick eyebrows, revealing a surprised look. "Of course I saw it from the slight incoordination of your movements." Xia Yan lifted his non-existent glasses, exuding a wise aura. Although Xia Yan did not lie, if he had not known that this was possible from the original work, he would have found it difficult to detect the slight incoordination of Kai. But Kai did not know these inside stories, so his eyes were shining, and he looked at Xia Yan with admiration. Amazing! Even the physical training teacher could not see it. "Teacher Xia Yan, your physical training must be very powerful, please be sure to have a youthful duel with me." Xia Yan's face changed slightly when he heard this, and he regretted that he pretended to be so cool on a whim, so that he was stared at by a strange creature. "Where is your opponent?" He quickly pointed to the opposite side of Kai, the one who was obviously the protagonist today, but was put out of play. "Ah, that's true." Kai finally remembered that the purpose of coming here today was to help Obito with special training. Thinking of teacher Xia Yan's proposal, he couldn't help but look down at the leggings on his feet, with a hesitant expression. Seeing this, Xia Yan said again, "It doesn't matter if you can't take it off, anyway, it's just a sparring match." However, Kai thought for a moment and shook his head and said, "No, teacher, you're right. Since I promised to fully assist Obito in training, I can't hold back at all. After all, youth cannot tolerate perfunctory work." After saying that, Kai began to remove the weights on his body. In addition to the leggings, he also hid a lot of small pieces of weights on his body. The inconspicuous weights fell to the ground one by one, making a dull sound. Compared with the original work, when he took off the weights in the tuning exam, it was naturally not as impressive, but considering that Kai is only 5 years old now, Xia Yan is going to call the police to report Mighty for child abuse. Although everyone in the ninja world matures early and develops physically yearly, they are not comparable to the bipeds in Xia Yan's previous life. However, adding so much weight at the age of 5 is still a bit too much. It is a miracle that his body has not collapsed. No wonder Kai, who almost couldn't enter school half a year ago, can graduate from the ninja school at the age of 7 2 years later, second only to the genius Kakashi. And Obito, who is opposite Kai, is even more stunned. After a long while, he pointed at the weight on the ground and stammered, So Kai, you usually carry such a heavy thing when training and fighting. Then he and himself are 50-50, doesn't it mean that he cheated?" Obito felt very uncomfortable. He still remembered that Kai was the last one to be admitted in the entrance examination, and he was the real last one. Except for the barely decent physical skills, all other subjects were a mess, even worse than Obito. However, while he, who was born in the ninja clan, was sneaking around every day, waiting to open his eyes and beat everyone, Kai was practicing silently. Even now that his strength surpassed most of the people in the class, Kai did not show off and still endured everyone's ridicule. However, the real clowns were actually most of the people in the class, including Obito himself. Although Obito was called the least Uchiha by many people, he was influenced by his surroundings and had a blind superstition about the Sharingan like other Uchiha. He regarded opening his eyes as his life goal and used the power of his pupils to distinguish between high and low. It seemed that all problems could be solved as long as his eyes were opened. However, at this time, Obito's superstition about the Sharingan began to crack. Because he began to doubt, even if he opened his Sharingan in the future, could he really beat Kai who practiced day and night? This doubt gradually turned into unwillingness, and Obito couldn't help but yell, "Damn it, I won't lose to you, Kai. I will also whack weights to myself when I go back. Hey, this is not the Dragon Ball world. Don't engage in a weight arms race, okay? Don't go to the wrong set." Xia Yan complained helplessly in his heart. In his mind, he also imagined that in the future, Obito would suddenly shout, "I'm going to be serious," in the middle of a fight, and then throw away the goggles on his head, smashing a big hole on the ground. In order to avoid this situation, Xia Yan had to dissuade him. "Obito, don't learn it casually. The weight and placement of these weights are very particular, otherwise it is easy to get hurt. And everyone has his own path. You don't have to follow Kai's path. You should wait for the old man to send you a plug-in." Obito couldn't help scratching his head when he heard this. It turns out that there are so many things to know about wearing weights. He had no choice but to give up the unrealistic idea just now. Kai kept nodding his head as he listened to Xia Yan's words, and he wanted to see the strength of teacher Xia Yan more and more. Xia Yan said again, "Since you were all ready, let's get started." So the two began their youthful physical training under Xia Yan's observation. Xia Yan felt a little bored watching the two people screaming and fighting each other. After all, they are only 5-year-old children. Even if they're talented, their current level is nothing to Xia Yan. However, in order to fulfill his responsibility as a teacher, Xia Yan resisted the urge to open the next volume of Snake Lady and forced himself to analyze the movements of the two. At this time, Obito was naturally no match for the unsealed Kai, and soon fell into a disadvantage. However, every time he was about to lose, Xia Yan would intervene and block Kai's decisive blow, allowing them to continue to practice. After repeating this for more than a dozen times, Xia Yan finally stopped the two. He looked at Obito, who was somewhat doubtful about his life after being hit by Akai's true strength, and said slowly, "It's just as I thought. Obito, compared to the overly gorgeous and complicated Uchiha fluid technique, the simple and rough Konoha fluid technique is more suitable for you. If you really want to improve your strength quickly, you'd better switch to Konoha fluid technique in the future." Although Obito's Uchiha fluid technique in the original work was also very powerful. But Xia Yan found that he, who had not yet turned black, seemed unable to get rid of the label of comedian given to him by the will of the world, and often lost the chain in battle. The Uchiha fluid technique that likes to show off operations further highlights his shortcomings. After all, the more steps, the greater the chance of error. So Xia Yan suggested that he castrate himself and switch to the simple and rough Konoha fluid technique. Obito felt that teacher Xia Yan was beating around the bush and calling him a fool. But he had just seen the power of Akai's Konoha fluid technique, so he didn't have much resistance to it. As for the Uchiha clan not being able to use Konoha fluid technique, they are not the old antiques of the Hyuga clan. It is better to say that for those who have the Sharingan, copying the enemy's physical skills and integrating them into their own fighting style is a common thing. However, Obito still has some doubts. "But teacher, even if Konoha fluid skills are more suitable for me, I have been practicing Uchiha fluid skills for so long. Is it too late to change to Konoha style now?" Xia Yan smiled slightly. "Of course it's in time, Obito. Have you forgotten that you still have a task to test the teaching aids? Teacher Xia Yan, do you have teaching aids that can help me learn Konoha fluid skills quickly?" Obito's eyes glowed, and his curiosity was mixed with a little joy of being able to take a shortcut. It was obviously an old illness. And Akai also looked curious, but there was also a little doubt. After all, in his mind, physical skills should be acquired through hard training over time, and there is no shortcut at all. Xia Yan saw the reactions of the two people. He smiled slightly, and without explaining, he flicked his left hand and took out a storage card and unlocked it directly. Bang! After the white smoke dissipated, Xia Yan was holding two yellow soft things in his left hand, which looked familiar to the two people. Then he shook his left hand and unfolded the two yellow things. The two people finally recognized what it was. It was a tights, and the teacher was holding a tights. This was not over yet. He pushed the tights in front of the two people with his left hand, raised his thumb with his right hand and said loudly, Yes, this is the most powerful teaching aid for physical training. As long as you put on this tights, you will immediately understand the true meaning of physical training. After that, he grinned, revealing 2 rows of white and shining teeth. Obito and his little friend Kai were stunned. This way of recommendation seems so familiar. Obito turned his head stiffly and looked at Kai, wanting to ask him, "Your relatives?" Kai was also shocked at this time, because he never expected that in addition to his father, he would actually be recommended a tights by someone one day. There is something going on at home. One update today, 3,000 words. Chapter 48 Dora Xia Yan's new invention. Teacher, this is what you call the strongest teaching aid for physical training. Obito pointed at the yellow tights in Xia Yan's hand with a shaking finger, and stammered. Damn. Isn't this the same tights as Kai's? Don't think I don't recognize it just because it's a different color. Obito looked at teacher Xia Yan holding the yellow tights on the left, and Kai wearing the green tights on the right, and couldn't help but mutter in his heart. Have I been pulled into some strange sect by accident? The name of the sect is probably Tights God Cult. And Kai was also shocked by the 2 yellow tights. At this time, he had not yet become a fundamentalist of the green tights in the future. He still maintained an open and welcoming attitude towards the tight members of other factions. So he looked at Xia Yan eagerly, and his expression was as if he found out that his roommate liked women's clothing. Sure enough, the teacher and I are of the same mind. No wonder he could see that I was wearing weights just now. At this time, Xia Yan didn't know that his image in the hearts of the 2 students had changed drastically. He was still introducing himself. Don't underestimate these 2 tights. They are not only extremely breathable, heat-retaining, and moisturizing, but also adopt a perfect shape and beautiful lines that pursue convenience of movement. When you wear it during training, you will immediately feel a different experience from before. The more Obito listened, the weirder his expression became, and the more he was sure of his idea, because the 2 even used similar sentences in their preaching. And Kai's eyes were already filled with tears. Sure enough, in this world, besides him and his father, there are people who really understand the wonders of tights. However, Xia Yan's next word finally made them concentrate and start to listen carefully. Of course, more importantly, these 2 tights are made of chakra conduction materials, and they are painted with special sealing techniques designed by me, which are very helpful for physical training. Obito's eyes lit up when he heard that there were runes painted on these 2 tights. He was used to seeing all kinds of cool sealing techniques performed by his teacher, and he felt that these 2 tights in front of him, which were so rustic, became tall and noble. What kind of help is that? He asked eagerly. Xia Yan poked his forehead helplessly and asked him to step back. Isn't that what I was going to say now? Xia Yan looked at the 2 people with curiosity and began to talk. To be honest, this thing is actually a byproduct of a failed invention of mine. My original idea was to let 2 people wear these tights. Then use the perception aid to record the flow and changes of chakra in the body when one party uses ninjutsu, and then reproduce it in the body of the other party through the resonance array, so as to achieve the effect of copying ninjutsu. Copy ninjutsu? Obito's reaction was obviously much more intense than Kai's, and he couldn't help but touch the corner of his eye. Seeing this, Xia Yan smiled and nodded. Obito, you're right. The inspiration for my design of this device is the Sharingan that can copy ninjutsu. It's a pity that it still failed. Because my perception array is not detailed enough, it can't completely record the slightest changes in chakra, and naturally it can't be successfully reproduced. What if you succeeded, teacher? Obito finally breathed a sigh of relief. You know, the Uchiha clan likes to play this kind of pretentious operation of giving someone a taste of their own medicine. If teacher Xia Yan really succeeds, then where will our Gasumoron family, no, where will the Uchiha clan be? However, considering that teacher Xia Yan is still so young, Obito is a little worried. He is worried that before he opens his eyes, teacher Xia Yan will invent the ninjutsu copying device. Unconsciously, Obito's superstition about the Sharingan has been greatly reduced again, and it seems more practical to study the sealing technique well. Then he heard teacher Xia Yan say, although this invention failed, it also got these 2 byproducts. I call it the physical technique copying device. Although it cannot copy ninjutsu, it can completely copy ordinary physical technique movements. At this point, Obito and Akai finally understood teacher Xia Yan's plan, and both looked surprised. Teacher, do you mean that I should directly copy Akai's Konoha fluid technique? Obito couldn't help but look at Akai. Your physical technique is good, but it will be mine in the next second. Of course you have to get the consent of Akai first. Xia Yan reminded. Obito was a little hesitant when he heard it. After all, this is the physical skill that Akai practiced with great difficulty. Is it really okay for him to copy it so easily? It seems that he is indeed not like Uchiha, because other Uchiha don't have such troubles at all. Who knows that before Obito can speak, Akai suddenly said, "Teacher, I have no problem." Akai. Obito turned his head and looked at Akai in surprise. Xia Yan also raised his eyebrows. Akai raised his thumb again and showed a confident smile. It doesn't matter. Although this tights can copy my moves, it can't copy my body that I have practiced day and night, and it can't copy my youth that is always burning fiercely. If it is helpful to you, Obito, then I will give you these moves. Akai. Obito was very moved when he heard this, and his eyes began to redden. Obito, cry if you want to. A man's tears are meant for times like this. Kaguya. Obito. Kaguya. Obito. The two opened their arms at the same time, hugged each other tightly, and began to cry bigly. It's over, Obito has been infected with the virus. I don't know if Madara will accept this in the future. Xia Yan looked at the two people crying and hugged each other, silently stepped back 2 steps, and said, "Okay, if you want to cry, you can continue crying after training. Now change these 2 clothes for me." Xia Yan distinguished the 2 tights and handed them to Obito and Kaguya respectively. This one is for Obito, and this one is for Kaguya. Remember to wear it close to your body, and don't leave other clothes, including underwear, otherwise it's none of my business if your body is burned. Xia Yan's words made the 2 people's bodies tighten somewhere, and they immediately lost the mood to cry. They took their clothes and walked to the nearby bathroom to change with some trepidation. After a while, the 2 changed clothes in the bathroom and returned to the training ground. Obito hugged his chest and followed behind Kai with an uncomfortable look. It was his first time wearing tights, and he didn't know if there was something wrong with the teacher's clothes or if all tights were like this. He always felt that he was wearing the clothes as if he was not wearing anything. This made him look at my guy in front of him with a strange look. So Kai always feels like this. Isn't this just a pervert? However, Guy, who was put in a baby tights by his father when he was born, knew that this kind of tights that looks like nothing is not available everywhere. At least the high-end tights he only wore during festivals and holidays did not have such a powerful effect. This reminded him of the little story about tights his father told him before bed when he was a child. The daimyo's tights. It is said that this is the highest realm of the tights legend. Through the extremely soft texture, breathability and ductility, people can't feel the existence of tights at all, and they blend into the skin. It is said that the daimyo was considered a pervert because of this, which eventually led to the demise of a country. And the cursed tights also disappeared in the long river of history. If he didn't know that there was only one tights, Akai would have thought that he was wearing the tights. And people are afraid of comparison, and goods are afraid of comparison. In the past, he always felt that the green tights were very comfortable and fit, but when compared with this yellow tights, all kinds of shortcomings began to stand out. Akai felt that he had become the shape of this tights, and it seemed that he could never go back. Not long after, the two returned to Xia Yan again. Obito pointed to his left chest and said, "Teacher, why are the words on our clothes different?" There was a circle on the left chest of the two tights, and each of them had a word written in it. Akai's is attack, and Obito's is receiving. It's very simple. The attack on Akai's clothes means that he is responsible for demonstrating the attack action. And the receiving on you, Obito, means that you are the one who receives the copied action. Xia Yan explained seriously. I see. The two suddenly realized and quickly accepted their positions as top and bottom. Chapter 49a. Serious Teaching Aid Test. Teacher, what should we do next? Obito asked Xia Yan eagerly. Don't worry, let me help you turn on the function of the tights first. Stand still and don't move. Xia Yan said as he walked towards the two. Obito and Kai hurriedly stood still after hearing this. Xia Yan walked in front of the two people, put his index and middle fingers together in a sword shape, and concentrated chakra on his fingertips, and tapped the words on the left chests of the two people. Then, a series of mysterious and profound rune spells began to spread from the words on the left chests of the two people, and soon spread to every corner of the whole tights, gradually linking to form a complete magic circle, and emitting a faint light. Immediately afterwards, the faint light emitted by the magic circles on the two tights began to become bright and dark, as if adjusting the frequency like breathing. Finally, the light and dark frequencies of the spells on both sides began to synchronize, and Obito and Kai felt that they had a mysterious and wonderful connection with each other. It was as if their bodies were connected together. Xia Yan concentrated and distinguished, and after confirming that there was nothing wrong on both sides, he slowly withdrew his fingers. The magic circles on the two tides dimmed immediately, and there was no sign of their existence. Xia Yan took 2 steps back and looked at Kai. Okay, Kai, you can start moving. But remember to do it slowly at the beginning, otherwise Obito may not be able to bear it. Yes, teacher, I will be very gentle. Kai agreed loudly, and then began to carefully raise his left hand. As he moved, Obito also felt a strange force appearing in his body, trying to pull his left hand up. Teacher, I have a strange feeling in my body, what should I do? Obito, who had not yet heard Xia Yan's instructions, did not dare to move his body, and could only ask for help. This is just a normal phenomenon, Obito, relax a little, let Kai lead you to move. Xia Yan explained. Oh, I know. Obito responded, and began to try to relax his body according to what Xia Yan said. As his body relaxed more and more, Obito felt that the force coming from Kai began to increase. But he did not resist, and let Kai lead his body to move. So soon, teacher, look, I raised it. Obito looked down at his raised left hand and said to Xia Yan excitedly. I see, Xia Yan nodded, but this is just the beginning, we have to move next. Kai, you can start to relax a little. Yes. So under Xia Yan's guidance, Kai successively put Obito in 18 different positions. The two gradually became familiar with each other's rhythm and speed, and became more and more in sync. At the same time, Xia Yan would occasionally make fine adjustments to the room spells on the tides based on the feedback of the two, so that the synchronization rate of the two would be further improved. Soon, the movements of the two became more and more intense. On the training ground, Kai was practicing the basic movements of Konoha's fluid technique one by one. And Obito was also on the side, doing exactly the same movements. Unconsciously, Obito began to feel that along with Kai's movements, there was a warm current flowing in his body, and there was a wonderful feeling. It was as if he was touching a place in his body that had never been touched before. He immediately told Xia Yan about this situation. Xia Yan was not surprised and patiently explained. This is actually a very normal phenomenon. Although we often say that basic physical skills do not consume chakra, in fact, after we ninjas learn to refine chakra, we will unconsciously let chakra flow in the body to improve physical activity. This is also the reason why you can easily defeat ordinary adults despite your young age. And because the training movements just now by Kai have reached the level of mastery, the power of all parts of the body has been twisted into one. Obito, if you copy Kai's movements, you will also let chakra flow to the meridian endings that you rarely use, and naturally you will have such a feeling. I see. Obito suddenly realized and couldn't help turning his head to look at Kai. It seems that this guy's physical skills are more powerful than I thought. Obito felt as if he had made a big profit, and he was a little embarrassed. Just then he heard Xia Yan say, so you have to thank Kai for his help. He not only taught you the moves, but also helped you train your body. Under these conditions, it would be unreasonable for you not to go all out, Obito. Obito felt the same way. For a moment, he seemed to be infected by Kai's youth virus and shouted loudly, yes. I will go all out. After that, Obito concentrated on experiencing the power of Kai's next punch. Suddenly, he got an idea and threw a punch. Snap. The power of the two overlapped, and Obito's punch actually made a sound of tearing cloth in the air. But before Obito could be happy, he heard Xia Yan say, Hey, Obito, your movements are out of shape, why are you exerting so much force? I told you to relax a little. Obito. ? Teacher, do you want me to go all out or relax? You're making me so confused. Xia Yan said. Now your task is to remember these moves with your body. It's not time for you to play freely yet. Now you just need to relax with all your strength. Obito. ... So while Obito was constantly trying to figure out how to relax with all your strength, the special training was back on track. After a long while, Xia Yan felt that there should be no problem, so he said, then you continue to practice here, I'll go to the library to read. With Kai here, Xia Yan didn't worry that Obito would have the opportunity to be lazy. Ah? Teacher, aren't you always watching here? Obito's eyes widened. You're already grown up, you should learn to practice on your own. Xia Yan shrugged. No, we're only 5 years old. Obito was speechless. Obito, you should know that the sign of a person's growth is not in age, but in whether he has a heart that is brave enough to face difficulties. Xia Yan looked into the distance with a deep look on his face. Oh. Teacher, you are so right. My youth is starting to burn after hearing this. Kai couldn't help but give Xia Yan a thumbs up. Obito also made the same gesture. Xia Yan nodded and said, "It seems that you all have no objections." Obito was mad. "No, I haven't expressed my opinion yet." Unfortunately, his thumbs up showed a different opinion. Xia Yan also pretended not to hear and turned away. Obito. ... But after walking a few steps, Xia Yan turned around and walked back. "Teacher, have you decided not to leave?" Obito said in surprise. Xia Yan shook his head, flipped his left hand and took out another card, saying, "I almost forgot to give this to you. Is this another teaching aid for training?" Obito was a little curious. "Yes, this teaching aid can increase your training speed by another 50%. 150%? Obito and Kai took a breath. The tights they were wearing were already very helpful for physical training. If the 50% improvement of the teacher's item was added, wouldn't it be a full 10 or even 9 times faster than their usual training speed? Thank you Chuan Wanglong for your reward, Shinong Chan Bai Kato for your reward, Wasilu for your reward, 20180408113744462 for your reward, and Tian Tian Yijing for your reward. Chapter 50. The end of special training. Teacher, how do you use this thing? Obito asked impatiently. He felt that with the help of the tights and the card, he would be able to crush Kakashi in a few days. And Kai nodded curiously. He had just seen the magic of the tights, so he naturally would not doubt the effect of this prop. Look, there is a word in the middle of this card. Just inject chakra into it and it will work automatically. Xia Yan explained while handing the card to Kai. Kai reached out and took the card. Obito also reached out and took it. Although he was a little speechless, he still turned his head and urged Kai. "Kai, then try it quickly." "Oh." Kai responded, and then injected chakra into the big sound word in the middle of the card as Xia Yan said. Then, a faint sound slowly sounded from the card, and then it became louder and louder. A piece of music that the two had never heard before began to sound. The music was melodious and exciting, and it made people gradually excited. However, Obito's expression was very strange. "Teacher, you said that this song can increase the speed of training by 50%. Is it this song?" "Yes, don't you feel like exercising?" Xia Yan nodded seriously and pointed at that guy. "But the effect of this thing varies from person to person. Don't you think it is quite effective for Akai?" Obito turned his head and saw that Akai had begun to nod rhythmically. Soon his body began to twist. Obito naturally twisted with him. He wanted to yell at Akai, but as he twisted, he found that the music was a bit addictive. It made him feel like running around the training ground 50 times immediately. If Xia Yan could hear his voice, he would not be surprised. After all, this is the famous morning jogging song Gonna Fly Now, which is the interlude of Stallone's special training in several Rocky movies. Even those who have not seen this series of movies have basically heard this music somewhere else. It can be said to be a must-have song for morning jogging special training. Of course, a song alone is not enough. More importantly, Xia Yan used the basic techniques of illusion and added some psychological hints to the music, which can make people who hear this song more excited. Although Xia Yan only knows a little about illusion, it is not a problem to use it to influence 2 5-year-old kids. At this time, Obito and Kai felt that they had endless energy under the influence of music, and they were eager to vent it. Therefore, after Xia Yan waved his hand, the two rushed to the training ground like wild dogs, and began to spend their youth and sweat to the fullest in the music. Xia Yan smiled and turned away. A few hours later, Xia Yan took dozens of school books from the library and returned to the training ground where the music was still echoing with satisfaction. Then he saw the two people lying on the ground. Obito looked exhausted and his body was completely hollowed out. Kai was like a live fish that fell to the ground, his body constantly flapping. He was still shouting, "Obito, help me up, I can still practice." Obito replied weakly. "Then you have to stand up first and let me to stand up, then I can help you up." Hearing this, Kai also stopped struggling and fell into deep thought. Why does it look a bit tragic? Xia Yan hesitated for a moment, but still walked over. Seeing the appearance of Teacher Xia Yan, Obito was about to shed tears. "Teacher, you are finally back. You didn't tell us how to turn off the music just now. That music is too long. I can't stop at all. Whether it's music or body." Xia Yan's mouth twitched when he heard it, and he scratched his head helplessly. It seems that this music effect is too good is not a good thing. Obito's first secret special training to defeat Kakashi ended with this little accident. After Xia Yan taught them how to turn off the MP3 card, the two rested for a long time before they barely recovered. Then they went to the bathroom again to change out of the tights and returned the card to Xia Yan. Xia Yan took the two wet tights, looked disgusted, and sealed them in the card with a bang. Let's go back and let No. 3 wash them. The two people who put on their clothes again actually felt a little uncomfortable. It felt like the clothes were in the way. Especially Akai, after experiencing the pleasure brought by the yellow tights. His own green tights could no longer meet his needs. He was wearing green tights, but he couldn't help thinking about the yellow tights in his heart. However, the green tights had been with him for so many years like a childhood sweetheart. How could he abandon it because of a momentary physical pleasure? Akai, who was very entangled in his heart, kept comforting himself. It must be a little uncomfortable to change back. As long as you wear it and exercise for a while, you'll get used to it quickly. Therefore, when Xia Yan announced the disbandment and everyone was ready to go home, Akai, who was already exhausted, was still ready to practice more. I'm going to go home by leaping back. If I can't do it, I'll stand upside down and run around Konoha 10 times. Xia Yan felt nostalgic when he heard this, because he often used this method to restrain himself in his previous life. Go to bed after this game. If I can't do it, then stay up all night. Hey, Xia Yan seemed to have suddenly discovered the cause of his death in his previous life. Seeing Akai squatting down and preparing to leap back home, Xia Yan called him again. By the way, Akai, is your father at home now? My dad? He usually does tasks during the day and comes home very late every day. Teacher, do you have something to do with him? Akai stood up and asked curiously. Is that so? Xia Yan thought for a while, took out a card and gave it to Akai. I have a job I want to introduce to your father. Here is the address. If he is interested, he can come here to find me. What, there is a job for Dad? Great, I'll go find him now. Akai was surprised when he heard this. After taking the card, he turned around and ran away. Xia Yan behind him was speechless, and said weakly, Hey, I haven't told you what the job is yet. The job Xia Yan wanted to introduce to my guy was actually the waiter he needed in his tavern, bartender, handyman, bodyguard, and final battle weapon. After all, his Keenan tavern is different from ordinary taverns. There are many valuable machines in it, and someone needs to watch over it. And this person must be strong and trustworthy. Among the many candidates Xia Yan was looking for, my guy stood out with his unique advantages. Cheap. Might Guy, who has not yet performed the drama of beating the 7 ninja swordsmen into the 3 lucky treasures, is still just an unknown genin. No one knows how terrible power is hidden in the body of this seemingly funny 10,000-year-old genin. Xia Yan, who is familiar with the original plot, will naturally not miss this opportunity. He originally planned to set up various barriers in the tavern, and usually leave a shadow clone there to take charge. If Might Guy, a humanoid nuclear bomb, is added, the defensive system of the tavern will be preliminarily completed. It can be said that everything is ready, only the east wind is missing. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.